All right, so we welcome to the Asheville City Council meeting. This meeting is being streamed as well as we're here in person. So let us begin with our Pledge of Allegiance. Here's our flag. Okay, this evening we do not have any proclamations. I do want to remind folks that you should silence your cell phones. And I have a note here that the exit gates will be open for those in the Civic Center parking garage. Okay, thank you. All right, our first item here is the consent agenda. Do I have any questions, comments, or a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We don't have anyone signed up to speak under the motion to approve the consent agenda. Any questions from council before we vote? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. We have a few presentations tonight. The first is our lead and copper rule revisions, responsibilities of the city water system, and our city manager is going to kick this one off, I think, by handing it over to, do you want me to? Brenna Cook? Okay, and I don't know Miss Cook's title. Tell me your yeah, you have to kind of go back and forth there with her.
Sorry. I'm learning, sorry. My name's Brenna Cook, and I'm Compliance Manager with Water Resources.
Oh, as it says on the screen. Yes, thank you.
Are y'all ready? Let me start. Well, today we'll be reviewing the lead and copper rule revisions and how they will affect water customers. We hope this presentation will help everyone understand the importance of these new revisions. We'll go over the history of the lead and copper rule, the actions levels for lead and copper, the new revisions that were passed in late December of 2020 but are still under review, our responses in preparation for the new rule, and potential responsibility of customers. The lead pipe and lead connections were commonly used until 1986 when it was banned by the federal government. And then 5 years later, EPA passed the lead and copper rule in 1991. It required water utilities to test for lead and copper in homes and to treat the water to reduce corrosion in household plumbing. It was the first rule and only rule to make water utilities responsible for water quality past the water meter. Asheville has met all requirements and we have never exceeded the 90th percentile when samples have been collected at the homes during compliance sampling for the lead and copper rule. Based on data, EPA has set the action level for lead at 15 parts per billion and 13 parts per billion for copper. Lead is commonly known to be harmful to adults and children. Lead can cause damage to brain and kidneys in adults, and in children under 7, it can slow development, potentially causing disabilities and behavioral problems. To reduce lead exposure, EPA passed new revisions in late December 2020. The areas of focus in the new revisions we'll be sampling at homes that have lead service lines or galvanized service lines that were preceded by a lead connection, and they have changed the sampling protocol that we have done in the past. Utilities now have to have a trigger level that will have to require them to react sooner to higher lead results. If the 90th percentile is exceeded by the action level or new trigger level, a certain percentage of service lines containing lead will have to be fully replaced each calendar year. And full replacement means both the customer side and the utility side of the meter. All licensed daycare facilities and elementary schools must be tested, and a service line inventory is required. Annual notification is informing customers must be given to homeowners who have service lines of concern, and that's any customer that could have a lead service line or galvanized lines that were preceded by a lead connection, or if we don't know what the material is, we'll have to send them a notification, and this will include how to reduce lead exposure and what they can do to get their line replaced. In preparation for the new revisions, Water Resources has reached out to consultant firms starting in April of 2020 This took several months of review, and we were able to finalize a contract with 120 Water Audit Incorporated in early December 2020. We also interviewed several employees in the city and gathered historical information from our GIS, and this occurred during May and June of 2020. In July of 2020, after going through several versions of this, we finalized an inspection form in our work order system to collect data we need for our service line inventory while crews and contractors are in the field. Here's an example of the customer utility side responsibilities, and I will have a disclaimer with this. Please ignore the sewer line part, since the city of Asheville is not responsible for that, but it was a great schematic to show customers what the customer side and the utility side of the meter is. So basically, the water utility is responsible from the meter back to the water main, and the customer is responsible from the meter up back to the house. EPA is requiring all utilities to make their service line inventories available to the public by 2024. We're currently working on getting as much accurate data as possible by that timeline, but since we have over 60,000 connections and we have to know the utility and the customer side, this could take years to complete to get an accurate account. Since 1991, we have replaced any lead connections and service lines as we found them, and we're fortunate to not have many, if any, lead service lines, but we do have galvanized lines. Due to lack of data, we will be assuming that any galvanized line was preceded by lead. So to meet the service requirements, any lead service lines or lead fittings, we also call them goosenecks, on the city side of the meter will be placed as soon as possible when found. Testing will be provided if any work is performed on a lead service line or a galvanized line preceded by lead fitting and water pitchers will be provided to the customer if work is performed on a lead service line on either side of the meter or if the lead results are above the action level. Customers who have lead, galvanized preceded by lead connections or unknown material will be notified annually. This will include how to reduce exposure, any health effects language that is required by the EPA, and resources on how to get their service line replaced. Lead service line replacement plan, we have to have that in place by 2024. And once again, as a reminder, only full replacement counts, so this means both the customer and utility side of the meter. And we have to have a funding strategy for service line replacement in place should we have to do that. And we would not have to do a replacement unless we went above the trigger level or that 90th percentile. The second part of the new revisions is testing in schools and licensed daycare facilities. We've never had to do this before, but the revision will require all elementary schools and licensed daycare facilities to be tested. If a middle school or high school requests testing, we are required to collect samples. All results will be made available to the public. We'll do that on a website. Utilities we can give advice on how to resolve any lead issues if they have any, but it's up to the school or the daycare facility to resolve the issue. But once they have, we are required to recollect samples once that has been applied. The other thing we have to do is we're required to give more in-depth public education. So we're launching the Lead Education and Prevention Program called LEAP. The LEAP website is on the Water Resources webpage as of today. Community meetings will hold community meetings in any areas affected by service line inventory or speak directly with affected customers. We have a lead hotline in place and email for questions, and that is available on the website. Free lead testing has always been available for City of Asheville customers, so if a customer is concerned, they can get their water tested. And we will, once again, be giving annual reminders for customers affected, and that will be the ones that have known lead service lines, galvanized preceded by lead, or if we haven't made it to their area, if we don't know what the material is, we will be sending them notifications as well. So what we ask of customers is that we hope they understand that the need for their participation is necessary to achieve these requirements. If they receive a notice, we ask that they please read it and call if they have any questions, and call us if they do know what their service line is. Especially if we reach out to them for inventory and sampling, this means that there are could have lead materials in their service lines, and the faster they respond, the sooner we'll be able to work with them to see if they do actually have an issue. So once again, just please we ask customers to follow the recommended guidance to reduce lead exposure. Guidance, once again, is available on the WEEP website, and we will be providing that in any letter we send to customers. We ask all customers to participate in our service line inventory study because we cannot get that done if they don't participate. We also ask participation in the lead service line replacement plan should we have to do that. They would be directly contacted. And we also ask every 3 years right now, we're on reduced monitoring, but we have to test 50 homes. So that requires customer participation. So we ask that if they are contacted that they would please participate in that. Are there any questions?
Just a quick question.
Okay.
So it sounds like customers need to participate. I got that message. Is there any resources that, say for example, it was determined that there is lead or galvanized or, there's a problem and the customer can't afford to replace the line? What's sort of the plan? And also, what would happen if people don't participate and you?
There's the EPA regulation did require that that's part of the funding plan, is that we have to have funds set aside for those that can't afford it. So we have actually, yesterday, our director applied for the American Rescue Plan Act as part of that. There's also, right now, we've talked to our state regulator, NCDEQ. They do not have grants specifically for that. Right now, if we wanted to apply, we could probably get a low interest loan, but we're hoping that more grants will come out and before 2024 that we can apply for and get budgetary reasons for that.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we have 2 more presentations this evening, and our next presentation is a noise ordinance update. Ben Woody will, for the 76th time, present the proposed revisions to the noise ordinance.
Yeah, I've gotten really good at this after that many times. So I'm going to move, well, first of all, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. I appreciate the opportunity to come share this information with you tonight. My name is Ben Woody, the Director of Development Services. I have a lot of slides. We've been at this for 2 years, so we've accumulated a lot of information over the course of that. I am going to move through that really quickly tonight, hopefully. This information will be made available on the noise ordinance project page tomorrow, so if I move through it too fastly tonight, it'll be available on our website so folks can go see it after the fact. But we have a lot to cover and not a lot of time. So I'm gonna kind of jump in right initially with the timeline. So we actually started the noise ordinance process, and it's hard to believe this, but in March of 2019. So we've been doing this for more than 2 years. We spent about 9 months on the front end doing public engagement, did a lot of engagement. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Had a pandemic in the middle of it. That kind of threw everything to a pause, and we've picked that back up recently. So we've been at this for a while, and tonight we are here before you with an update on the overall project and looking to move this forward to some sort of consideration in the near future. I just real quickly want to acknowledge that we have had a lot of collaboration from internal departments, so it hasn't been just DSD. I want to acknowledge the Asheville Police Department and the Equity and Inclusion Department for all the work they've done. They've actually helped us in a lot of this throughout the process, so I just want to recognize them. Also want to recognize our community contributors, because this has been really busy for staff, but there are a lot of people in this community that have put a lot of energy and time into this process. So I'm not going to read the list, and there's a lot more than that, but these groups have put hours and hours and hours of time into this to try to collaborate and find consensus. And I just want to acknowledge that and the work they've done. And we haven't found consensus on everything, but we've tried in good faith. The noise concerns, we know that. You probably know that too. You get the same emails that I do, but these are generally the 8 areas that we identified as top concerns in the city. This came out of the 9 months of public engagement, the review of APD's call data. So we feel pretty comfortable about what the issues are. And we do feel comfortable because this is the work we did on this process. You can see it's actually probably more than 40 stakeholder meetings at this point, but thousands of survey responses, quite frankly, hundreds of hours of meetings with community members. So we've just done a lot to engage on this. And again, I think we know what the issues are. The challenge is the details of how to move forward. I'm not going to spend much time on this slide, but actually I would argue that most people in Asheville agree generally with what we're trying to accomplish. One thing that I've found really unique about this process, and perhaps about Asheville, is there seems to be a desire to have a community-based solution to a lot of the noise issues. I think a lot of the groups I've worked with over this want to try to educate, want to try to solve it at the community level first before the city is involved, or before there's punitive measures. I think that's been a common thread amongst everybody in this process. And so what we've done, and a lot of this comes from over time, and you know, during the middle of this, we also had the reimagining public safety effort. So we kind of started in DSD as just updating the ordinance. Now we're administering the ordinance, so even our role has kind of evolved through this. And I just want to take a second to tell the council and the community that we aren't looking at this as just an ordinance change. We've looked at this as building a program or standing up a program. So, and I'm not going to read the slide to you, but we think that what we're really talking about is a combination of things to make this work. It's how we manage this, how we respond to the community, the approach that we use, and ultimately the standards we decide upon to promote a quality of life that's acceptable in Asheville, but also allows businesses to thrive and be successful. We've used equity. A lot of credit goes to the Department of Equity and Inclusion. They've helped us on this journey. We've learned a lot. We use the GARE Racial Equity Toolkit. You can link to that, or you can see that from our website, the city's project page. You can see the process that we use, and I think that equity lens and that toolkit's informed some of the recommendations I'm going to share with you about the ordinance. So this isn't going to be as bad as it looks, but we're going to go through the ordinance, and that's why I was moving quickly. But I do want the council to understand some of the changes. This is the outline. I'm not going to hit all these sections. I'm going to move through them quickly and touch upon a few where we've got some outstanding issues. This is very similar to the current ordinance outline. It is very similar to the outline you see in most other cities in the United States. So the manner in which ordinances are constructed is pretty consistent across cities. What's important is the content that goes in the ordinance. So that's what I want to talk about, is some of the content or some of the things that we're trying to make or trying to do that's unique to Asheville. So again, the structure's kind of the same everywhere, but the content's what matters. So probably the most important thing to enter this or in this presentation with tonight is to understand what applies where. And there's been a lot of confusion over that. So there's basically two concepts or two standards in this ordinance. And what matters is where the sound comes from. So the first thing you have to determine is who's producing the sound. Once you answer that question, you then can apply what standard is applied to that situation. So if the sound originates in public space, which is land owned by the city, for example, right-of-ways, et cetera, or residential districts, that's a residential zoning district, if the sound originates in one of those areas, it's subject to a noise disturbance standard. I'll talk about that more in a second, but that's important. If the sound originates in a commercial district, so that includes all the commercial zoning districts, industrial, and the central business district, the sound is subject to a decibel standard. So let's talk about the noise disturbance standard just for a minute, and I want to take a second to spend on this. The noise disturbance standard is a subjective standard. In some respects, that can be challenging, but in other respects, that allows the city to use context when enforcing the ordinance. So the one thing to keep in mind is that, yes, volume is one of the standards of the noise disturbance requirement, and you can use decibel levels to aid that finding, but decibels aren't the sole determinant of whether or not a noise violation exists. And remember, this is in residential situations, public space. A lot of times, unique things are occurring. So what the noise disturbance allows to happen is to use other criteria beyond just decibel to evaluate a noise complaint: duration, frequency. Is it something that's not loud but is persistent for 6 straight hours? Or there's context that comes into play. The noise disturbance standard allows for context when you evaluate a noise complaint, and we got to that through our equity analysis. Is the noise a kid roller skating in the hall? Is it somebody that works a third shift and is playing music? Can it be solved with a conversation rather than a citation? So that's the point. That's our recommendation for the noise disturbance standard. We think it allows context to be used in certain residential and public space situations. The objective decibel standard is a little more straightforward, and that provides more clarity. So again, this is for noise that originates in commercial districts, so you're looking at businesses, industries, things of that nature. On the table, you can see we've included the original staff recommendations, which are kind of hashed out in gray, and then in blue, you can see the changes that were recommended by the Public Safety Committee. And essentially, what we're doing is we're measuring sound at the receiver's property. So again, it's originating in a commercial district. We measure at the receiver's property. I always like to say this, on your own property, you can be as loud as you want. There are no limits to your own property. You can be as loud for as long as you want. What this is about is how loud can you be on somebody else's property. So that's really important to remember. And what we've always, in conversations with businesses, is basically if you're a business and you can calibrate your business to meet these standards at your property line, you really don't have anything to worry about beyond that. So that's just the way to look at this. If you're in your building, do whatever you want to do as long as it's not louder than that at the property lines. And one thing, I don't want to take it just a second because I want to recognize this is pretty straightforward. Where it's really challenging is when you have businesses that abut residential areas. Those kind of transition areas, we've called that. A lot of the residents want to see what they're calling a universal residential decibel standard. So basically, if I'm in the middle of a residential area, it's a universal decibel level that I can say businesses can't exceed that in this residential area. That's really difficult in these transition areas. In Asheville, 9% of residentially zoned properties abut a commercial, industrial, or central business district. So those 9% of residential properties are right on the transition, and that's been an area that's really difficult to pin down a decibel level that works for the business, but also works deeper into the neighborhood. That's a challenge. That's one of my things that need to be addressed slide that's coming up later we'll talk about. And the last thing, just on these decibel levels, I want to take a second to say this too, is the staff worked hard to come up with these recommendations. We've benchmarked against other cities. We have spoken to the enforcement staff in Raleigh, Charlotte, and Wilmington. We have taken, with a type 2 decibel meter, we've taken more than 90 individual decibel readings in this city over the past 2 years. And we've also taken ambient sound modeling and correlated that with Asheville zoning districts to get a feel for what ambient sound is in Asheville. So we've tried to base these decibel levels on assessment, measurement, and benchmarking with other cities. And this is just a snapshot of the benchmarking, but we have looked at more than 20 municipal ordinances over the course of this process. Everybody does it different. These are some of our neighbors here that are closer than others. Some in red, as you see, they measure the sound from the business's property line. Some in blue, you see, measure the sound from the receiver's property line. Neither way is right or wrong. You just got to get the decibel levels right for whatever you choose. And a quick point of clarification, the sound isn't a max, so it's an average. So the way it's measured, and this is common in most jurisdictions, is you take a meter and you measure an average. So if there's a peak, if the decibel hits 80 just for a second, the average is probably still going to be much lower than that. So it's not an indication of, did I hit 75 decibels one time? It's, am I averaging 75 decibels over the course of a minute or longer? Sound measurement, and I'm actually going to skip this because I just told you all this, so that's one slide we can go through real quickly. Prohibitions, I won't spend much time on this either. Every ordinance has a set of prohibitions and exceptions. We're not changing a lot. I do want to point out 2 things that we're recommending be changed. One is we want to address people that are intentionally projecting sound into other spaces to attract business. That's the idea of putting a speaker in your window at 1 in the morning and pointing into the street so more people come to your place. Not many places do that, but a few. The other thing is we were proposing to prohibit amplified sound within 150 feet of a public school or a healthcare facility. Those are places where services are happening and quiet is important for those services. Exceptions, got to spend a minute on this. One of the noise issues, as you remember, was fireworks. That came up a lot. So we have worked with, in the current ordinance, the fireworks displays that the tourists do are exempt from the noise ordinance. We are proposing to create a set of standards that apply to the tourists and their fireworks displays. We've worked with them on that. We've come to some consensus with them, so they're going to limit the number of events, the days and the times, and they're also testing an advanced notification system where they can give neighbors a heads up before the fireworks start. This is my day job, construction noise. This is what we do in DSD, but not a lot of changes in this. Again, just so everybody knows, construction can occur Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. If it happens after that, it needs a permit, and we're managing that process. There's a lot of construction in Asheville, so there is a lot of noise associated with that, but there are limits that are in place for that. Permitting, when we started this, we proposed two types of permits, one for music venues, one for what's called sound exceedance. We have dropped the music venue permit. That didn't seem like an appropriate manner to handle some of the noise complaints that we were receiving. We have maintained the sound exceedance permit. I've got to take a second to explain this. So sound exceedance is the permit that allows you to exceed the decibel levels. By their very nature, some events are going to be louder than those decibel levels that I showed. I think it's important to allow that to happen at times in a controlled manner. Most cities do that. Some call it a variance, some call it an exception permit. But what we've proposed in this is really three tiers or three types. The first is if you have an annual party and you just want to be loud, that's great. Maybe it's a nonprofit fundraiser. Come to the city, get a permit. You'll provide notice to neighbors. You'll have your event. If you do events more frequently, you would be a type 2. That's between 3 and 8 events. Again, this is to allow you to exceed the decibel levels. Doesn't limit your number of events. Doesn't make your event stop at a certain time. It controls how long and how often you can exceed the decibel levels. In this case, we're asking for the permit and what's called a sound impact plan. That's just, we're going to ask you, are you pointing your speakers at your neighbor's house and things like that? Just want to make sure you're setting up the event in a way that minimizes sound impact. And finally, there's a bigger category. This is limited to venues or properties that are permitted as a performance center. We have a use in the UDO called a performance center that allows you to do outdoor concerts. There's a number, or outdoor performances, doesn't have to be a concert. There's a number of those venues in the city that are permitted to operate in that manner. So we have created this larger tier and limited it to those venues and are asking they do a professional sound impact plan. One thing I would probably recommend is with this noise ordinances is there probably needs to be a look at how we're allowing performance centers, because there are really no standards for those right now in terms of any mitigation or potential land use impact. So we may want to take a look in the future at where the city's allowing outdoor performance centers and how they're allowing them. We are recommending a noise advisory board. Right now, the current board hears appeals and citations. It's quasi-judicial. We're recommending that be reformed as an advisory board, really to help manage the program and make recommendations to council about necessary changes. Penalties, we continue to have civil citations. We've increased the amounts of those. Again, our goal is not to be punitive. This is the last resort. Additionally, there's some enforcement mechanisms around the sound exceedance permit, and we've created a process where if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, that permit can eventually be revoked. Typical language in the ordinance for violations and appeals. There is a way to appeal a violation in this ordinance. Right now it goes to me, so I'm not so sure about that, but that's how we laid it out. So there will be a position that's not me that will administer this noise ordinance, though. Enforcement roles, and I'm again almost done, moving as quickly as I can. I think this is an important slide, though. This is kind of an outcome of reimagining public safety. This is where we're at now. We're going to hopefully get better at this and take more of this off of APD. I do want to recognize and thank APD for helping us with some of these complaints. Just 90% of noise complaints happen outside of DSD's business hours. So we're actually only working 10% of the noise complaints. So APD has really helped us manage some of that after hours activity. Not to say that we haven't been doing that ourselves, but this is what it would look like initially. And that's, again, as we continue to move into this and work with APD to transition this, more and more of that will move to the DSD staff. I have a couple more slides, almost done. So I just want to take a second. So resident to resident, this is just an example. So this is what this could look like, and I think this is important. Again, this is, remember, the noise disturbance standards. So these are the subjective standards where we have the 5 criteria that staff can apply. The first thing we're going to ask people to do is talk to their neighbor. Not everybody feels comfortable, and that's okay, but a lot of people do. Maybe it's through a homeowners association, maybe it's through a property manager, but the first thing people should do is have a conversation with the person that's making the noise. And we'll provide information, strategies, and tips for doing that successfully. But that's the best way to solve a lot of problems. If that doesn't work, then you file the complaint with the city, and then we're going to come out and take a look at it and try to assess if in fact it's a noise disturbance or not. Whatever that outcome is, there needs to be education. So regardless of whether it is or it isn't, both parties need to be made aware of that and given an opportunity to correct the situation, because a lot of times you may not know you're causing a noise disturbance. So again, there's an enforcement approach that is educate first, then if you have to, move to a formal warning, and then if you still have to, eventually maybe move to civil citations, but that's really a last resort, and that would be reserved for chronic noise offenders or violators. Similar situation, really the kind of same concept. Remember, it's objective decibel levels though. So in this situation, we've got a business that's creating noise perhaps into a residential area. Same thing, go talk to the business owner. I've found that a lot of business owners probably don't know that they're causing an issue and usually will take steps to mitigate that. Not all, but most. If not, DSD gets involved, we educate. We try to make sure everybody understands. This is a little easier because it's objective standards, but to make sure everybody understands and hopefully corrects the violation. If not, we move into the enforcement provisions. So basically, this is the last slide. This is where the hard work, I think, kind of remains in this process. These are some of the areas that we have not got total consensus on. We've gotten a lot of agreement on a lot of things, but these are areas where I think the stakeholders are just not together. Decibel levels, you'll probably hear some comments tonight. There's different opinions on what the decibel levels should be. As staff, we've tried to find middle ground based on the research and the work we've done. I think there's still the specific instance of where residential abuts commercial and the idea of like a universal residential decibel limit. We're not opposed to that. We just got to figure out what that number is and how to handle the transition areas. When does night start? Is it 10? Is it midnight? There's always a lot of discussion over when, because at night things get more restrictive. And then finally, around the sound exceedance permitting is how many events are okay, how loud should it be able to be, and then how long should it be able to go. So those are kind of the technical areas that we're left trying to work through as staff. And then this is my last slide. At this point, we'd like to, as staff, answer any questions you have tonight or at any point. We'd like to continue moving this ordinance forward. We'd like to bring it to council for consideration at some point in the near future. One thing that all the stakeholders agree on, based on, we're coming out of COVID right now and a lot of economic challenges, I think everybody agrees that the actual effective date of the ordinance probably needs to be 6 months later in the year at a later date. And then in that interim period, we'd like to continue to collect data and make sure we've got this right. And I'm sorry I took so long, but I can answer any questions you have.
So it would come back to council for a vote. So what was the timeline?
We'd like to have it back at your late summer, so perhaps whenever an
August.
available meeting is on the schedule.
Maggie won't let, well, she probably won't let you get to us till September.
I think we have it on for September 14th.
Okay,
Okay.
September 14th. And then have a delayed effective date as part of that.
Right, for, I assume data collection, but also kind of education rollout.
Correct, yeah.
Thank you, Ben. Great job over the last couple years. I know a lot of effort has gone into this, both on your part and the communities. If we're looking at a delayed start, is there also still a consideration for a trial period once it's in place? Or are you trying to do the delay and testing instead of the trial period?
I think what staff would like to do is commit to this new ordinance and go ahead and put it in place. And then in that delayed effect, and it doesn't matter to me, honestly, what it's called, it's probably fine. But then if somehow we've got something wrong or incorrect, then certainly bring it back and have those corrections made. But yeah, we'd like to see the ordinance, because there are issues that I think the ordinance gives us tools that in the future we're going to be able to address some real issues that are out there that we don't have the tools to address right now.
I had a question under the exemptions. You mentioned fireworks, and I'm not talking about the tourist ballpark, but how would the new ordinance change regarding fireworks? We did get a lot of complaints about fireworks, especially in the West Asheville area, it seemed like to me last year. So tell me what the difference would be under this ordinance.
So this ordinance exempts legally permitted fireworks. So these are professional fireworks shows that they're done by an organization. If you are doing illegal fireworks, they're not exempt by the ordinance because they're not allowed to begin with. So again, this is an exemption specific to legal permitted fireworks.
So if you were to, you would have to come get a permit to do your fireworks display
Correct.
or whatever?
Yes.
Okay. And then can you tell me right now kind of what your volume, no pun intended, of calls per year is regarding noise complaints or APD's volume?
2,000. There's 2,000 noise complaints annually. And that's been consistent for 7 years. As a matter of fact, even in the pandemic, we had 8 less phone calls in the previous year. 2,000. And a lot of
That
those,
seems high. Is that high?
it is. It's like, for example, Wilmington's 800 to 1,000. So we're double what Wilmington is.
And is that, would you say, partly due to our topography?
I think it's topography, sound. I've learned that sound is really strange in Asheville, the way it travels. I also think there's systemic noise issues that if we address some of those, I think we could put a real
So repeat
offenders. And
Yeah.
we have the data. APD has given us access where we can track that and we can identify repeat and systemic noise issues and actually be more proactive to try to address those. And I think that'll help too.
Any other questions? This is kind of a good, I just would mention, this is kind of a good opportunity to let Ben know if there's something in particular we had concerns about that we saw in this presentation or we really aren't going to be able to live with. I mean, he's given us quite a list of things they're still trying to work out, but if there's something else that we're going to get hung up on, it'd be a good idea to give a heads up.
I had a question, speaking with several neighbors that had concerns, the sound exceedance permits, when we do review it, could we possibly see that as almost like a heat map to see not only like how many we permitted, but where?
Absolutely. Yeah, we can do that for sure. And we've actually made heat maps around noise complaints, so it would be easy to do that for permitting or other types of, really for anything, quite frankly. So yeah, definitely.
The other thing I would say is I'm a little concerned that we would wait until September to start because I'm worried that we're missing an opportunity to test out what summertime noise looks like and sounds like.
Are you all, as a staff, kind of going to be looking at noise complaints now and thinking about how this ordinance would apply to it, or?
We already are tracking noise complaints, and we have, even though we can't respond as this ordinance is written, we are tracking and collecting data as if this were the ordinance. So we were actually kind of using this as a basis for what we're doing. Again, although there's tools in this that we just don't have now that kind of hinder some of our ability to enforce a noise ordinance.
Two things, a question and a comment. I am concerned about the sound exceedance permit violation, the 365-day revocation of ability to have any kind of music. I just feel like that's a pretty large jump from a 2-week suspension and then putting someone's potential business at risk for a year. I just wanted to voice that. Question, I saw somewhere, I'm trying to get to the slide, about vehicles driving around projecting sound. There are so many slides, just a second.
Are you talking about the exhaust revving?
No, that is I'm glad to see that's in there as well as the jake braking. But
It's under prohibitions, and we've
Yeah.
proposed a prohibition on mobile sound vehicles after 10 p.m.
And the mobile sound vehicle, help me understand this. Is this, I know there's a truck that goes through downtown with a billboard saying things. Is that what we're talking about?
Correct. That's right. Not intended to be a normal person playing their radio. You know, it's intended to be a commercial vehicle that's producing sound to create commercial business or commerce. So it's
And-
defined. I don't have the definition in front of me, but it's written in a way that's the intent of it.
And am I to understand it's okay until 10 p.m.?
It is, under this ordinance, it is okay until 10 p.m. Unless it's deemed to be a noise disturbance, because it's in a right of way.
I mean, wouldn't it be in the right of way because it is mobile?
Yeah, I'm saying, like, after 10, it's a prohibition, so that's easy to enforce. Before 10, it could still be determined to be a noise disturbance, and we could, pursue enforcement in that manner as well.
Is that activity currently allowed? Would this be?
I don't believe there's any prohibition on mobile sound
Okay, so it's
vehicles,
just more that you're addressing it.
We're trying to address, that was one of the issues that came up, we're trying to find a tool to address it.
Right.
Correct.
And how about an ice cream truck?
It would be subject to it.
Well, but it would, before 10, though, you're
Before
gonna-
10, it's gonna be,
Yeah.
I mean,
How
I guess
many
the
ice
question.
cream trucks are out
Yeah, I
after
mean,
10?
It's,
All right, okay. That's, we saved the day there, okay. No more ice cream trucks, kids.
actually,
Ben,
it's,
you
yeah,
did
it
it.
could be 11, whatever, I mean, yeah.
Okay,
My kids are gonna be disappointed I said that.
okay. All right, so this is not going to go back to another subcommittee. This will just come back to council, what sounds like with some tweaks to address the several outstanding concerns or things to be decided anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we'll do our best to address those, but I will feel like those will probably come back with some differences of opinion, so.
Sure, I think what you're warning us is that don't expect that there's going to be 100% consensus on
Correct.
each of these points.
Yes.
Right, I understand.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, that brings us to the manager's report. I'll turn it over to the manager, Deborah Campbell. I feel like something happened with the refrigeration in here. Is it better? Yeah. Okay. Phew. That was extreme.
Good evening, and thank you, Mayor. Actually, I have two reports that I want to provide for you all this evening. One will be on just an update on our efforts related to reparations, the speaker series, and talk about what the next steps are. And the second part of my presentation will be actually handed off to the Chief of Police, who's going to provide you with a similar presentation that he made at the Public Safety Committee around policing activities and some of the crime data. So I'm going to try to step through my part as quickly as possible. And again, the reparations initiative is a result of a resolution that was passed on July 14, 2020 by the Asheville City Council supporting community reparations for Black Asheville. In February, the city manager provided to council as well as, I guess I'm the city manager, I don't have to say the city. I provided you all with a presentation outlining some initial steps at us looking at this important initiative in our community. And in fact, the resolution directed the manager to develop the process. At the February presentation, I recommended a three-phase process. The first phase we've completed in terms of the information sharing and truth-telling. We will be moving into the second phase very shortly. And phase 3 will happen kind of after the commission has been formed and their work is being done and underway, and them bringing back recommendations to elected officials. The speaker series and participation, as you know, we divided the speaker series into 3 parts. June 3rd was the past policies and practices. June 10th was present trends and disparities. And June 17th was future initiatives. We had a total connections of about 2,560 people, and you can see that there were a number of different avenues in terms of people could show up at this particular facility, or they could call in. They could watch it on video, and you can see from the numbers, the favorite option was to watch it on YouTube. I want to thank all of the speakers who participated in the process. I'm not going to go through and name all of the folks, but on June 3rd, We had, I think for the launch, a great opportunity to hear about Asheville's past. On the June 10th was kind of the present analysis of where we are, particularly as it relates to disparities. And then June 17th was, I thought, personally, one of the best panels because it was all local people, and really spoke from their heart and talked about what Asheville's future can be about. Other participants was Dr. Darren Waters, who was our moderator. And I really have to give a shout out to UNC Asheville for their participation and assistance with this initiative. Damian Davis was our DJ. Michael Hayes and MC Ellis were both from Resources for Resiliency. They did something both before and after the event to kind of get us level set, I guess. And then Shemeka Ebony helped us with community engagement strategies, and then City of Asheville staff. And I guess as a city manager, I really shouldn't be calling out names of staff because there was a lot of staff that helped with this initiative. But I'm going to take an executive privilege to name two who went above and beyond, and that's Jamie Matthews and Chris Coral. This event could not have happened without those two staff people, but there were lots of other departments, and city staff, please don't be mad at me if I don't mention you directly. Also, on June 8th, at our last council meeting, you all passed a resolution and budget amendment an amount of $2.1 million to help us kind of seed this initiative. And now phase two, what are our next steps? Again, the formation of the commission and to finalize and present the report. The critical paths will be compiling the information that we got from our speaker series. That is all of those nuggets of insight and vision and passion about addressing the disparities and even initiatives about what we can as a community do to address those issues. We'll be developing a request for proposals to recruit, we hope, a project manager, and this will be a firm that will provide the staff support that's needed to support the Reparations Commission. I just cannot imagine our current staff being able to absorb this workload. So we will definitely have to have some support. And then staff will make recommendations, which is probably the most important part of this process, which is the selection of the commission members and how that process will follow. And I think there was a question at our last council meeting about whether the county commission would be a part of this process. And yes, we'll be working with county staff to finalize that process. And then lastly, I want to thank our event sponsors, the Explore Asheville, Buncombe County Tourism and Development Authority, McKibben Hospitality, and Duke Energy. There was a little bit of a comment at our last council meeting about the TDA being a part of this process. I'm actually glad that they were willing to support our effort, as well as the other contributors. I think they are making a statement about their commitment to our community and to this initiative. I hope that this won't be the last time that they'll be participating or contributing. And so with that, I will take any questions if you all have them. Otherwise, I will turn it over to the Chief of Police to give you an update on crime. Yes,
Thank you,
Vice Mayor.
Deborah. I had a comment concerning another level of outreach for information sharing and truth-telling. If we're using the information We're compiling the information from the panelists and community members in order to inform our next steps. Do you really believe that we had enough discussion around policy? And do you believe we had enough representation from the larger Black community in order to move to forming the commission and them taking the information in order to bring back recommendations to council?
So I hope that no one thinks that the information and truth-telling was the only public input that's going to happen. It was simply just to kind of get us started and hear concerns and issues. I would recommend to the project manager and to the commission that they consistently have ongoing information sharing and truth-telling as they do their work, that the community be a sounding board, particularly when they come up with recommendations prior to them making recommendations to the elected officials. Did we get enough participation? I don't think we can ever have enough participation around this particular issue. We will do our best as a staff to improve on the attendance and to try as many other avenues and venues of reaching the public and encouraging and soliciting their participation. What we learned, like we had a listening session at the Edenton Center, and I think we had about 50 people there at the June 17th session, and we think we can do, more of that kind of communication. Also, we videotaped. We actually went out in the neighborhood and got video of people, and we will be providing that information both to you all as a package as well as to the commission to begin their work. So I hope that responds.
Yeah, I think we heard an overwhelming amount of feedback during the last session where people wanted a dialogue. And the Thomas Wolfe Auditorium and the panel, it didn't really massage dialogue. In dialogue, you get the stories, and it's more a personal touch.
Sure.
So I think folks want the personal touch. That's why participation at the Edenton Center was a success. I think people, instead of going to a place, I think they want us to provide some type of outlet where we go to them.
We want to meet them where they are. I totally agree. Any?
I just wanted to, there are only a handful of communities even embarking on this journey. And so we are figuring this out, and we are even creating a model maybe others may follow. And I want to commend you and your staff for this first part of the process and designing this conversation and involving all these different speakers who came and participated. Because, there isn't a roadmap for us like there are so many other things. So I appreciate all of the efforts you all have made.
Thank you, Mayor. We appreciate that. Anything else?
I just wanted to echo some additional appreciations, including meeting the original timeline. So I think these are great, slow and steady timelines, and I appreciate that. And last year we learned that you would bring us more information by July, and here we are. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, well, we're going to shift gears now to have Chief Davidzak come up and provide you with, again, this is the similar presentation that he provided to the Public Safety Committee. So we apologize for the committee members having to hear this again, but I will turn it over to Chief Zak.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Maggie, do I need you to cue me up here? Very Very good, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of council, city staff. As Ms. Campbell stated, I did give this presentation earlier today for public safety, and she felt that it was important enough that I share it with full council this evening. What this presentation really is kind of an overall picture of crime in our city and how that picture has really evolved over the last 10 years. Our key takeaways, hopefully, is just to explain how over the past 10 years, Asheville has experienced an increase in violent crime. However, that trend is similar and on trend with other major metropolitan cities in North Carolina like Raleigh, Charlotte, Mecklenburg, and Greenville. We continue to work with our other city departments and our community partners to take proactive steps to address and reimagine the role of APD in public safety, and that despite our current staffing shortages, APD is still very aggressively developing and working on strategies to address violent crime and other types of crime. This particular graphic is kind of interesting. It's a 10-year snapshot, not only of the nation, but also how North Carolina crime is reflecting what's happening nationally. And what you can see is kind of like the ebb and flow, rise and fall of crime. And you can see pretty consistently the situation in North Carolina is much like that in the rest of the United States. Except for in 2019, where you saw as crime was falling, especially violent crime across the country was falling, there was kind of a sharp uptick in 2019 in the state of North Carolina. So whether that's an anomaly, why that happened, I think it's hard to say right now, especially when when the 2020 data comes out, because we all know that year has also been an anomaly. So whether that trend continues outside the national averages, we won't know until more data comes in. But to kind of rely on 2020 data might be difficult as well. What this graphic shows is really just overall crime. This is everything, part one, part two crime in the city. And what you can see is from 2014, we're not seeing the ebb and flow like you saw on the national chart or even the North Carolina chart. You're seeing here in the city just kind of a steady rise of overall crime. From 2011 to 2020, it represents roughly a 45% increase in overall crime. But you could really see, again, from 2014 on all the way to 2019, a steady rise. We did see a drop in overall crime in 2020, the year of COVID, of course. And really what you'll see is that drop in crime was more the result of just a drop in property crime, not necessarily violent crime. And here's that chart. Once again, we're talking about, basically burglaries, larcenies, motor vehicle theft, arson. Property crime, kind of a steady increase from 2014 to 2019, and then you see a little bit of the drop off there in 2020. Not so for violent crime. These include murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault. Basically, you see from 2015 on just a steady rise, slow rise in crime to 2020 for violent crime. Of course, the most violent crime of all is homicide. Recently, the Major City Chiefs Association found that homicide rose by more than 32% in 66 major cities from 2019 to 2020. Fortunately for our city, we have not seen an explosion of homicide. It's pretty much stayed relatively level, probably between 7 and 12 per year over the last 5 years. So we have not seen that sort of explosion in violence. In 2020, we did have 10 people killed. In 2021, sadly, and of course we just had a murder last evening, we've had 5 people killed in the city, and all of those have been by gunfire. The national clearance rate on homicides is 61.4%. That's how often these crimes get solved. And you can see with APD, we're very consistent with our clearance rates with what's happening nationwide. So the homicides that we have, the murders that we have been able to bring people to justice successfully in most cases. As far as gun violence goes, currently, we have had 18 people shot this year. That is slightly down from 21 at this time a year ago. APD, since January 1st, we've taken 114 guns off the street. Thank you. Thanks, Keith. We have seized 114 guns since the first year. These are guns that have been taken into evidence that have been used in the commission of crime. So despite our reduced staff, we've even taken more guns off the street than we did a year ago, and we hope that trend will continue. The reason we've been able to do that is we've been coordinating heavily with our federal, state, and local partners, and also our surrounding agencies, to discuss and address not only the gun violence here in the city, but the gun violence county-wide. This is still a major area of concern for us, and these are our calls for gun discharges within the city. As you can see, again, from 2018 on, we've seen a significant rise in the number of calls that our officers have to respond to because of a gun being discharged. And again, in red there, you can see the number of people that have been hit by gunfire in our city. And again, a significant rise from 2019 to 2020. And unfortunately, we're pretty close to that number year to date in 2021. But that is a large number of shots fired calls. As we get into our traffic enforcement efforts, you can see, and I was asked this earlier today, like, boy, what happened in 2019 as far as the issuance or the number of traffic stops that APD was performing. And of course, this number predates my arrival here, but according to Deputy Chief Yelton, who led this effort back in 2019, in 2018, the city of Asheville led the state in injury crashes, fatal crashes, pedestrians struck. So it was a huge issue in 2018, and they looked at data, and it was really important to step up enforcement efforts. So enforcement efforts increased heavily in 2019, and of course the end result of that was there was a significant drop in those fatal crashes, pedestrian struck, and injury accidents. And then, of course, just like everything else, 2020 hit and the world changed. We had to really adjust our proactive traffic enforcement, again, mostly because of COVID and the risk of exposure to infection, not only between our officers and motorists, but we had to be very, very concerned about a major outbreak within the police department of infection. So our proactive efforts were really significantly rolled back in 2020, which accounts for the decline. As we look into 2021, you can see this is really the result of staffing being reduced to the level that it has. I don't need to go into that. We've discussed that at length. But again, with fewer officers, proactive enforcement suffers greatly. But also, a part of that as well has to do with our really laser-like focus on violent crime, where we're really putting a lot of our effort in that direction. So that accounts for the drop. And consistent with the number of stops is going to be the number of citations. And this, again, just is a graphic that depicts the heavy enforcement effort in 2019 that was successful in reducing those crashes and fatal accidents and pedestrian struck. But again, 2020 is COVID, and year to date, we've only issued 700 tickets in a 6-month period. So that's an extraordinarily and historically low number, without question. So when we talk about citations, what are we writing for? What this graphic depicts is, 60% of all of the stops that we make and the citations that we issue have to do with moving violations, red lights, stop signs, speeding, that sort of thing. Regulatory violations account for about 23%, and then, and that's your no registration, no insurance, no inspection, when those citations are issued. So that accounts for about 23% of our stops, and then, the rest of the way. So this is what I presented at Public Safety, so any questions on the data that I provided?
I have a question for you. There were 114 guns seized since 2021. 200 guns were seized in 2020. From a lot of the stories we see promoted on through the media, those aren't only gun seizures, but also drug money seizure. So what happens with the money here? Because in some cities, they take the money that's once used to facilitate the flow of drugs, and they put that money back into the community to stand up or help support community programs. What do we do with the money here?
Again, a lot of that if that money is seized, that goes into the asset forfeiture fund. That money can be turned around. It can be used for a variety of issues. We can devote some of that. There are very specific regulations as to what that seizure money can be used for. Some of that can be funneled towards drug and gun drug reduction programs to a small degree, and also for gun violence and so forth, but also for the purchase of equipment. So there's a long laundry list, but there are quite a few restrictions on how that money can be repurposed.
Okay, I would love to see us look into that. What happens if the arrest is a task force effort where you have federal, state, other law enforcement within the city? How do you decide the equity share?
There's a formula for that, and that's determined by the feds.
I would love for that to be a part of reimagining.
I have a question. Slide 7, talking about the clearance rates. Do you have any additional information on why you were so successful in clearing 2021 homicides? The percentage is higher. I'm just curious if there's any additional story there.
Well, really, it comes down to the level of cooperation. Also, we've really received, and I'll go into that in a short bit, is the anonymous tip line that we've set up has been extremely effective. We have a very active citizenry here who really do want to get involved and do want to help us. And what we're seeing since we've installed that tip line back in December of 2020, when we have a very serious incident, when we put the information out there, we do get response. And it's been very encouraging, and it's been really helping us direct investigations early on, because those first early hours after, a gun violence situation, that's when you're going to be most effective in your investigation. And when you have people calling in and pointing us in the right direction early, it really improves your clearance rate, and we've had tremendous success with that anonymous tip line. And then, but there are other circumstances as well that can affect those clearance rates. Sometimes there's going to be no witnesses. Other times there's many witnesses. There are a lot of factors in play.
Thank you. One additional comment. I appreciate you bringing this to the full council. I'm not able to attend the public safety meetings, and I go back and watch them sometimes. But I think in general, the community would like to hear more of this information, so I appreciate you bringing it to us tonight.
Absolutely.
If we could go back to the slide about the traffic stops, I think it was 17 or 18 from today's Public Safety Committee. Either one of them will work, but that one works. So the traffic stops by race, when I look at the dashboard that you mentioned earlier today, we're still disproportionately stopping black drivers at 21.2% of the stops. And so what I'm curious about is if we can look at this as far as how many accidents happened in these years, whether it's any mode of transportation, and also population, to tell more of a whole story if actually stopping vehicles results in safer commutes.
Population's difficult because we do have a tourist community here, which
Right.
really affects our flow of traffic. So to just compare to population alone doesn't necessarily paint an accurate picture. Also, when we look at some of our citation, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. You can tell me if I'm not. You know, when you look at like things like regulatory stops and things like that, they're not necessarily regulatory stops, they're regulatory citations where did we go to an accident and then there were multiple citations issued. So again, it's not always, traffic stop data is a really deep dive and we're always looking at it. And again, different enforcement efforts are going to produce different results, especially when we get a request from a community member or so forth to go to certain neighborhoods and increase enforcement in certain neighborhoods. That could create disparity. So traffic stops are a very complicated issue and not easily answered with just, you know, pulling one statistic. It really does require a deep dive. We try to do that as best we can and parse through the data, but as you know, data is, you can't collect enough of it, and the interpretation of it sometimes isn't always easy. And but we do try to be cognizant of it and direct our efforts appropriately.
Just would like to ask a question. I basically had spoken with someone in the community that was concerned about the increase of illegal guns in the area. And I was just wondering, are you taking any extra steps to try to figure out what is going on or how we can work on cutting down the amount of
Absolutely.
illegal drugs?
Every gun that we seized is processed. It's run through ATF to try to find what the origin of that gun is and where it came from, where it was sold. But again, sometimes, you know, that trail goes cold after a while. There are a lot of guns out there, but we do try to trace origin in sale records and so forth to try and figure out how those guns were obtained. We know a lot of them have been obtained illegally. We know some have been obtained legally. There's a lot of guns out there, and tracking them down is something that we definitely try to do.
Another question I'd like to ask, how many of those guns would you say have had serial numbers and things like that filed off where you actually can't, you know, makes it difficult to, it was evident they were trying to hide the source of those guns?
I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't have that information right now.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? I know you've got a little bit more to your presentation, so I want to make sure we've got time for the rest of it.
Okay, thank you. Again, I get this question all the time, whether it's phone messages left or emails or just being stopped on the street, and it's what can our community do to help out APD? And one thing we really want to push hard, and we pushed it hard last month, is to really utilize our Police to Citizen tool to report incidents online. This avoids the necessity of an officer having to physically come to the home for cases or certain incidents that can be reported online. Also, crime prevention. This is everyone's responsibility. We can't rely on APD alone. So we're always encouraging folks to, you know, lock your doors, both your home and your vehicle, and to secure your belongings. What I can tell you is even just last year, just talking hundreds of calls per year of just vehicles left unlocked and items being stolen. That creates, number one, a lot of calls for service, but also a large number of investigations. Stolen bicycles, huge issue here. And that's mostly just leaving bikes left out in the open, leaving them on porches. Again, requires a call for service, but also hundreds of investigations to try to resolve those. So it would be a big help if we could be a little bit more diligent in protecting our own property and protecting our valuables. And then, of course, as I said, is our Tip 411 hotline, tip line, which is anonymous, to use that diligently. And it's been a huge help so far, and the more participation we get from that, the better luck that we're going to have. I just wanted to kind of reemphasize the online reporting because, as we all know, last month we did discuss some changes in the service that we were providing in depending on how that message was received, you know, in some cases it was the sky was falling, in other cases, political theater. And it was neither. What we were really trying to do was really get this tool up and running. We had put in, and online reporting is being utilized in cities all over America and has been for a very, very long time. And we had actually put this tool in place back in May of 2020 before there were any staffing issues whatsoever. And just what we were finding is it's just being underutilized. And it's very important. And the reason we put that back in May, and the reason agencies have had these in place for years, is just to free up officers to handle to handle the most serious incidents in their community and really improve the quality of life in neighborhoods. That's why we installed this tool. And again, we installed it back in May of 2020, and it just was really not being used at all, maybe just dozens of times per month. So that would just be a big help, again, if we could get more folks to just report minor crimes online. It's a big help. And again, the TIP 411, we put this in December of 2020. Since that time, we've received almost 1,100 tips, and many have led directly to or assisted in charges and arrests, whether it's shootings that we've had, drug activity, other nefarious acts being reported to us, and it's been a huge help. And just kind of to give you a recent incident we had just last week, where we had an individual break into 6 homes in one evening in West Asheville. We put out some security footage of that clearly identified the individual. The TIP 411 hotline just lit right up, and they told us exactly who that individual was and where they lived, and we were able to make that arrest in very, very short order. That came almost exclusively from the leads from that through the tip line. So again, very, very helpful tool, and it's producing results for us every single day. As we move forward with how we reimagine public safety in the city, APD, we are continuing to work with the county very closely as they work on developing their community paramedic program. We're very involved in those conversations. We're very supportive. Asheville City Schools, we're meeting regularly, again, as we discuss the roles of our school resource officers. 9/11 consolidation, again, we are very much supportive of that effort as we try to move through that process and come up with a communication system that's best going to serve our city and our county. We're also looking into some innovative strategies as it involves traffic crashes. We're looking into the possibility of bringing in crash reporting centers, which would really reduce, again, the officer response to very minor accidents, and we're even looking into the possibility of civilian crash investigators, which I guess is something that has been rolled out in Wilmington. So we were just on the phone with them last week to kind of see what exactly it is they're doing and see if that's even a possibility here. So we're looking at every possible option and every possible force multiplier we can. So again, we're working with everybody. We're working with the federal government. We're working with the county. We're working with surrounding police agencies, whoever we have to, and of course our community, to reduce violent crime in our city. Traffic enforcement, again, has taken a little bit of a backseat. We've had to reduce our proactive role there, and again, that's for the staffing shortage certainly has contributed to that. And we're, again, as I think Ben Woody explained, you know, even our city department heads, you know, are working very closely with us to see how we can work together to provide better public safety here in the city. So we're working with everybody. We'll continue to work with everyone. Everyone is working extremely well with us. And we move forward.
Thank you, Chief. Any
I
other
have one
questions?
last question.
Yep, sure.
It seems that our community is very responsive to technology. So I'm going to bring this question back to you about the gunfire locator. It seems that it's successful in other cities in helping response time to gunfire, guns being discharged. In less than 30 seconds, you all would get notification that a gun has been discharged, and it's quicker than 911 dispatch.
Absolutely.
So I know it's a lot of money, but do you think it'll be successful?
I think you've already articulated, it's been very successful in other cities where gun violence is a major issue. There's a lot of technology out there. The sound detection for gunfire, I'm very, very familiar with that product. I've researched it for years. I know it is successful, as you said, in getting us to the scene much quicker. Their dispatchers call in even before someone will call 911. So we're already taking minutes off our response time just because of the sound detection technology. Not only that, the sound detection technology, it does coordinate and triangulate the location of where those shots are fired, which then when you're talking about evidence collection post-incident, we're going to be gathering more evidence that we may not have been able to obtain before, which is going to help, again, in the investigation of that crime. But and we know that, you know, one gun is used in multiple crimes more often than not. So it improves our clearance rate on other cases as well. So it's very proven technology. It's expensive technology.
Like, what's the price tag? Give me.
Oh man,
wanna know
I tell you what,
how much is too much?
Here's I can tell you, I can't remember exactly. It depends again how much coverage you're looking for. So that's going to be a factor. Where do you put the microphones and how many? I just remember when I brought this to my community in the past, as soon as I gave them the price, they passed out. So it really depends on how much area you're looking to cover. So we would have to bring the vendor in, and then we would have to kind of sit down and collectively say, where are the best locations, how much would be required, and then, all right, here's the bill. So then do you decide to maybe roll back, or do you have an appetite for more? It just really depends. And again, it's been quite a few years since I've researched, so the price of technology, sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down.
But do you think it'll be a deterrent?
Well, I think anytime we're removing, I mean, the number of violent offenders tends to be small. And, anytime we are removing the most violent from our city, we'll see a result. Whether it would be a long-standing result is another matter, and that's where our community needs to become more involved in those partnerships where we have things in place to prevent violence and to keep guns out of people's hands in the first place. So while I think you can certainly make a dent in the current level of violence, yes, you can, but a long-term strategy is going to require more than just that. And I think we have to keep that in mind. What we want is sustained result, not a quick reduction, but then to see the gun crime and come back up and flourish again, because I think that's what you see. So it's a multifaceted approach, and I think technology can play a big role in that, and I think we should explore it. And with your blessing, I will move forward and we'll get more information, and because I am very familiar with the product, and we can start looking at that and just present it down the road and see what we think.
One last kind of question. Again, I think this is very helpful for the community to see these additional slides as well, and how things are going and what they can do on their own, and these new resources and technology. What's missing, I'm fielding a lot of emails from the community. What's going on? What are the numbers? What are we hearing? What are we seeing? And there seems to be a lot of media. I'm curious, since this is so informative, do you have any updates around staffing? Have you been able to recruit more? Do we have a timeline? I think I saw something about a January. There's a large recruiting effort, or 50 new potential recruits. I'm just curious if you have that other missing piece of how staffing is going.
Staffing right now, well, back in 2020, we graduated 7 candidates. In 2020 of December, 6 have already quit. So if that's any indication, We had 7 that we just put through in our recent academy. 2 didn't make it through, so we got 5 replacements. Something that we've talked about repeatedly when it comes to recruitment is where we stand in the marketplace. And I know City Council is addressing that very aggressively, which is important because that's going to be a big piece of our recruitment strategy. We know that North Carolina is one of the lower paid states for a police officer, and in Western North Carolina, it's particularly low. So I know we're stepping up to the plate on the compensation issue, but you can do all the recruitment in the world, but if you're not in the marketplace, you're going to be at an extreme disadvantage. I think City Council is prepared to address that, and I think we're going to have a very much more robust opportunity to attract more recruits. But you know, we'll see. Nationwide recruitment, it's not an Asheville issue. This nationwide, every agency in the country is going through what we're going through as far as attracting people to this profession. And we saw big dips in recruitment after Ferguson. And now since, last year, again, nationwide, we've seen another hit as far as persons interested in getting into law enforcement. So it's tough all over. It's not just here. We've got to address what we can as a community, and we've got to support our police officers. We've got to pay them appropriately, and we have to seek out the best candidates, and when necessary, we have to separate those who aren't doing the job that we want to do from service. So it's all of the above, and as long as we're putting out a good product and the compensation is there and we're within the marketplace, we'll have a better fighting chance. Right now, we do not, but I think we're getting there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for being here tonight, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation, and I do think it is good that sometimes we elevate these presentations to the full council so we can see some of what our subcommittees are looking at. And I appreciate, and we're about to now go into the budget in just a minute, but first we have one public hearing item A, and I need a motion to continue item A to September 14th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
This is Sage. I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue item A until September 14th, 2021. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So unfinished business, it's kind of an understatement when you're doing your budget. And I'm sure we're going to hear a short presentation here about the budget, which might include the process in getting here. But just as a reminder to folks, the public hearing on the budget was at our last city council meeting, which is a statutorily required process. And that hearing has happened, and tonight is the vote on the budget, so we don't take any further public comment. But Tony McDowell will take it away, our finance director.
Yeah. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tony McDowell, Finance Director. And as I was sitting in the audience earlier, I was trying to remember if I've presented as many times on the budget as Ben Woody has presented on the noise ordinance. I don't think so, but I think we're getting pretty close this time. But I think this will be our last presentation. As the Mayor mentioned, we had the public hearing 2 weeks ago, and tonight is council consideration of the budget ordinance. So we do have a few slides to go through, and then I'll turn it back over to you all for discussion. So just a quick overview of the budget, and we've shared this information with you all before. This proposed budget that we brought to you is based on internal work, a lot of internal work over the last 6 to 9 months, council priorities, and also the community input that we've received along the way as well. And it represents a continuation of the reimagining public safety process that we started around a year ago this time. The proposal is balanced, and we believe it's a fiscally responsible budget. It funds investments in some of City Council's highest priorities, It does recommend a property tax rate that is above revenue neutral to achieve some of those investments. It also continues to fund our core services in a time of rising costs, and it continues funding for our multi-year capital improvement program as well. And finally, we just want to point out, as we have throughout the process, the work won't end tonight. Work will continue throughout next fiscal year on a number of items, including reimagining public safety, reparation, and the strategic use of American Rescue Plan dollars to achieve some of your goals. And in fact, I think we'll be back to you all in late July to talk more about the American Rescue Plan and some of our goals and objectives around that. So the proposed budget was presented to you all on May 25th in accordance with North Carolina general statutes that require us to present a balanced budget to you all prior to June 1st of every year. We then held a public hearing on the budget on June 8th. That's also required by North Carolina general statutes. And tonight we bring you the budget ordinance for adoption. But before we turn it back over to you all for discussion, we did want to highlight a few adjustments that have been made to the budget since it was presented on May 25th. The first of those, and you all are aware of this from the last meeting, in the initial proposed budget we brought to you on May 25th, we included a $1.2 million fund balance appropriation to further our reparations process, which included money for planning, community engagement, and an initial allocation for reparations. We revised that plan, and at your last meeting on June 8th, you all adopted a budget amendment in the current fiscal year to go ahead and appropriate $2.1 million for reparations, utilizing proceeds from the sale of city-owned land to White Labs. So we've taken that out of next year's budget since it's already been added into the current year budget. We did make one minor adjustment to next year's budget. We're expecting to receive somewhere in the neighborhood of $25,000 in donations to support the Reparations Speaker Series, and so we've added that to the budget for next year. The biggest adjustment that we're proposing tonight, and this one was not discussed at your last meeting, but it's reducing the recommended tax rate. At the May 25th meeting, when we presented the budget, we recommended a tax rate of 41.3 cents, which was 3 cents above revenue neutral. Since that time, we've gone back, we've looked at some various strategies, and I'll show you those on the next slide. But we were able to reduce the tax rate from 41.3 to 40.3. So it's a 2 cent above revenue neutral tax rate that we're recommending tonight. To get us there, we had to utilize a number of strategies. On the revenue side, we've received some additional sales tax information since we presented the budget, and sales taxes in our economy still continue to perform above our expectations. And so we were able to add some additional sales tax money to next year's budget, approximately $400,000. We also identified some transit-specific rescue plan funding to fund our transit operations and some of our expansions next year, which helps reduce the transit fund's reliance on general fund support. So we were able to reduce that contribution by about $1 million. And finally, we're recommending appropriating about $500,000 in fund balance. And with that appropriation, we will still be slightly above our policy requirement of 15%. So with that, I'll conclude and turn it back over to you all. Again, just a reminder that it's been a long budget process. We've really been talking about the budget for almost a year now. It's involved a lot of work on staff side, a lot of time from city council, a lot of community input, and we're going to continue that throughout next fiscal year as well. We believe, again, that it's a fiscally responsible budget that we bring you all that helps move us forward on a number of our key investments. And as I mentioned, the work will not end tonight. We'll continue to talk budget throughout the upcoming few months as we talk about the rescue plan and how we're going to utilize those dollars here in our community. So with that, that is my last slide, so I will turn it back over to the mayor.
All right, thank you. And I want to thank you and your staff and staff even beyond the finance department, because a lot of folks were involved in engaging with the community around building this budget. And I know it's your first rodeo. I mean, you've been there a long time, but as the lead rodeo director. So I want to thank you. It's a new title. So I want to thank you for all the hard work that's gone into this process.
Well, thank you.
Before we let Tony sit down, does anyone have any questions for Tony? Okay.
Mayor, I have a prepared statement, if I may. Is
All
this
right,
the right
well,
time?
let us first get a motion to approve the budget, and then we'll have some discussion.
I move to adopt the fiscal year 2021, 2022 annual budget ordinance.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Yes, and Councilwoman Bernie.
So today, I'm remembering the call for $1 million for the people and intergenerational Black leadership asking for us to divest from policing in order to invest in long-term safety strategies. Asheville's in a unique position. We have 188 vacancies in City Hall right now and additional resources to address our overlapping emergencies. Reverend Amy Cantrell has called our budget, quote unquote, a moral document, the agreement and source of funding for our services, plans, and policies. So obviously, I'm not the artist in the family, but I have a box that I've repurposed to illustrate my point. On the face, the budget looks like what we need to be doing: housing, youth programming, neighborhood investment, expanded transit service, and action on lagging wages for our lowest paid employees, including living wages for our firefighters. And this looks like a yes. And if we look at the budget in 3D, we really have to look at the how and the why. So first, the how is increasing property taxes. So I pulled a couple of slides from Joe Minicozy of Urban 3, has made this presentation to the Racial Justice Coalition, and has generously compiled and presented data around the disproportionate impact of property taxes and the ongoing structural racism in our assessment policies. This information hit me really hard, and the responses I heard from the community were both moving and heavy. Seen here, we have the comparison to the redlining map, and a side-by-side comparison of adjacent neighborhoods is in the second slide. So here you see Brucemont Circle, right next to Burton Street. This is the assessment that we're evaluating when we talk about increasing property taxes. Now, this is in the county, obviously a different conversation, but the difference between Biltmore Forest and Shiloh. So if we look at a longer range view coming out of the recession in 2013 on the third slide, we see the assessment go down for Buncombe homes in the highest 20% value, while the lowest 20% value see an increase. So on this slide, there is a lighter blue line that is the lowest 20% valued homes. And they're the ones being assessed the most tax. So the how we get to our budget funding matters. Neighbors, including Nina Tovish and Rich Lee, are voluntarily offering analysis around mitigating the impact of the property tax increase, and it sounds like our $150K for mitigating the impact for homeowners needs to be closer to $1 million. And that's not including the impact on renters and businesses. And then there's the why. Because we're funding the new initiatives on top of business as usual, we need to diversify our responses to public safety calls, and we don't have to start from scratch. We can partner with community paramedicine, and we need to pursue a violence interrupter pilot. I'm hopeful because of our resourceful neighbors, including the people here in the room, and of our capable staff, and with my colleagues, that we can take bold action to get to the different outcomes we say we want. So my suggestion is that we move to pass this budget with 2 amendments. I originally had a suggestion to freeze 30, but following the story of what's happening in Durham, that we freeze 15 of the 88 open positions in APD, so we can partner in diversifying our available responses to public safety calls like mental health crisis and overdoses. And 2, to commit publicly to finding the necessary funds to mitigate the impact of our increase in property taxes, including eviction protection funding through the ARP funds, because $150K isn't going to cut it. My expectation is that our hiring goals are optimistic. So mitigation funding might be found in the $7 million plus in vacancies while we're experiencing a national pushback from workers demanding better wages and working conditions coming out of the pandemic. Thank you for your consideration.
I have something to add since the discussion about freezing the hiring of police officers or reducing the amount. When I initially saw the crime statistics, I wanted to delve into those a little bit more. So I requested crime statistics specifically relating to Black women. over the past 5 years, I'm looking, and it's emotional for me because it's disconcerting. Over the past 5 years, 32% of victims of violent crime, that's rape, robbery, aggravated assault, and homicide, have been Black. And despite comprising only 6% of Asheville's population, Black females are 16% of all violent crime victims. The disparity is even greater when considering that 1 in every 5, 20% of domestic crime victims in our city are Black and female. So I'm wondering what consideration, if any, and have we been able to extrapolate how many Black women will die if we reduce the number of police we have by 15? Has anyone considered that? I didn't think so. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Okay, we have, Councilwoman Roney had kind of 2 motions in there. Is there anyone who wishes to second either of the motions? All right, the motions fail for lack of a second. Is there anyone else who has any comments regarding the budget before we vote on this budget? Okay, I appreciate the process, as I mentioned before, getting here. I think we used the most robust process I've seen during a budget process, and even with the pandemic and the restrictions that placed around the process in terms of community outreach, it was robust. So again, I want to thank staff. And I'm very proud of this budget. I think it contains a lot of important things that move our community forward. There are some increases in here furthering our transit master plan, for example. There are staff raises in here that total, I believe, around $7.9 million, which is the greatest increase I've ever seen in terms of salary adjustments for city employees. City employees make up approximately 1,250 employees in Asheville, and we have always struggled to pay them at a competitive rate to really show them not only our appreciation for their hard work and sacrifice they make for our community, but also to help them afford to live here in our community. And I think it also applies some pressure to other employers in the community to match that. So I'm hopeful it lifts, rising tide lifts many boats in this situation. I think our firefighters were heard, and the raises that will be received in this budget will bring all of our firefighters up to $15 an hour, no matter how we argue about calculating it. So we put that one to rest. So that is something that we should be proud of. And I hope that it delivers a competitive wage to our police department so that they can have more tools in their toolbox to go out and recruit folks to come work in our police department. Someone said to me the other day, they said, you need to fill all the vacancies in the police department. And I said, well, we're trying to do one part of that, which is to provide an increase in salary to make our police department salaries more competitive. But it's not like there's a line out the door of people signing up to do that job. And the line got a lot shorter recently. I've had the pleasure of presiding over many graduation ceremonies for the police department, and there weren't 7 people. There were many more candidates that were graduating. And I know that this is a city that struggles with wanting to provide services to our entire community in a fair and equitable way and make it a community that is safe with a high quality of life for everyone. And at the same time, extend our appreciation to those who make a great sacrifice for us on a daily basis. And that includes our police department. So I, for one, just want to extend that appreciation to you all, and thank you for being here tonight. And not to belittle the role that so many others play in our city: Public Works, our water department, our planning department, sanitation, all those that, our civic center staff, all those that work for our city. But I know that some jobs are much more scrutinized and criticized than others, and through no fault of any individual here. And so I just want to extend my appreciation to everyone for the hard work they put in and hanging in there. This is a great city. We've got a great administration and with wonderful leadership, and the future, to me, looks bright. And I love how engaged so many of our community members are in the conversation about where we're headed. We don't always all agree, and that would be totally boring if we did. So I appreciate all the voices.
I just wanted to add one thing to Councilwoman Roney's concerns. You know, the city of Asheville does not carry out the property tax assessments, but that does not mean we are not, you know, responsible for watching and understanding what is happening. And I believe I saw Joe Minicozy walk in earlier. It sounds like he's signed up to speak. I just wanted to say I did reach out to Mr. Minicozy about this concerning information, and he did say he would be willing to come and present to council at a future date. So I don't want to make light of Councilwoman Roney's concerns around that and the disproportionate impact to low-income communities, and I personally would like to see us have such a presentation in the future. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, council, we are ready to vote on the budget unless anyone else has a comment. All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay, we have concluded our vote on the budget. Council, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back, and we have one item of new business, and then we have several folks that are signed up under public comment. So with that, let's take a break until 7:05. I hope my clock's right. Okay, welcome back. We have one item of new business, and that is a resolution updating the land use incentive grant policy. And I believe Paul D'Angelo is, yes, here to speak on this.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Paul D'Angelo with the Community and Economic Development Department. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Management. Thanks for having me tonight. Very nice to see you all in person after a long time on virtual. Here tonight to talk about a land use incentive grant policy update and walk through about 10 slides and hopefully take some questions. Some key takeaways you can look for in the presentation. Land use incentive grant update here will allow existing market rate units to convert to affordable units to help preserve and protect affordable housing. Affordable units from existing housing stock can be added more quickly than new construction that can often take 2 to 3 years. We are asking our development partners to assist more with the acceptance of housing choice vouchers and rental assistance, individuals and families at or below 60% of the area median income, or AMI, and community outreach and marketing for equity and inclusion. So at the council work session in January, we talked a lot about the city's role in affordable housing as a funder, city-owned land, regulatory, as well as convener collaborator, all in the efforts to produce, protect, and preserve affordable housing. I think we're doing okay on the production of affordable housing, but need to do a little bit better on the preservation and protection of affordable housing, and hopefully this Luigi updates helps a little bit with that. So currently in the land use incentive grant, there is a scorecard for Luigi, and every 5 points can earn 1 year of economic incentive. That economic incentive is equivalent to city property taxes with full improvements calculated. in excess of currently assessed city taxes at the time of the Luigi application for 1 year applied annually, to be dated from the date of release of all occupancy permits for the project, with a Luigi not to exceed 20 years plus 1. I do have a mathematical example for that to help clarify that language. And Luigis are currently paid with general fund dollars and budgeted annually. With this land use incentive grant update, everything stays the same, except we added in an additional line there that for adding affordable units to existing all market rate rental complex, the tax value of the building will be granted back, but not the land value. And when we tried to analyze this from a financial perspective, we took a look at the points that it might take to make these qualify for either a 20-80-20 or a 20-80-30, 20% of the units at or below 80% of the area median income for a minimum of 20 years, 25 points or 5 years of a property tax grant, or 40 points for the longer level of affordability at 30 years, which would be equivalent to 8 years of property tax grant. So a current Luigi example, just to look at some of the financials and the investment on the city side. Current tax value of vacant land, say right now, a parcel equals city taxes paid of approximately $1,000. After construction, or the improvements, of 100 rental apartment homes with at least 20% of the units affordable to individuals and families at or below 80% of the area median income for a minimum of 20 years, the 20-80-20, the new tax value of the land in the new building equals city taxes paid of $41,000. The city would grant back the improvement value, currently, that $40,000 for X amount of years, depending on how many years they qualified for. So looking at an example with a conversion, this is a kind of real-world example that's out there right now. A current apartment complex of 166 units pays approximately $68,640 in city taxes, and broke that down into land value city taxes as well as the building value city taxes. And the apartment complex is purchased by a company interested in adding that 20-80-20, which would then qualify them for this updated Luigi, and we would be able to gain 33 affordable units from that conversion. Once the company meets the targeted numbers of that 20-80-20, where we anticipate that would happen in about 2 years, the city would grant back the full building value, just the building, $60,158, for X amount of years based on the Luigi grant. So if that was a 10-year Luigi, it would equal about $18,000 plus per unit for affordability. And if it was a 20-year Luigi, where we were granting back the property taxes for 20 years, it'd be about a $36,459 subsidy for affordable units. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Based on current vacancy rates in the community for apartment complex, about 4%, we would anticipate that the city could add 7 affordable units almost immediately for a 166-unit apartment complex if the conversion was to happen. Other changes of note in this policy, and I'm going to jump ahead quickly to this just so everyone understands the subsidy and investment part. We presented this without the days-in permanent supportive housing at the January work session to show how we were doing on a subsidy per unit level. Right now we've identified that it's about $80,000 per unit in subsidy to have a unit be affordable for 20 years at 80% or below area median income. Right now, with our kind of track record for the last 12 to 18 months, and including the days in purchase, if that happens here, comes in at about $32,795. So we're meeting developers a little less than halfway, which is kind of our work that we want to do, where we're at the table with developers trying to meet them halfway to be able to get affordable units. And I just wanted to be able to show that investment dollar. And then quickly, other changes of note in this Luigi, where at least 20% of the units must meet the affordable standards set by the City of Asheville, which is known as Appendix 1, for individuals and households earning 80% or less of area median income. And now we're asking that 50% of those affordable units accept some type of rental assistance or housing choice voucher. So as an example, if there's a 100-home rental community, we would expect 20 units to be affordable. 10 of those need to be affordable to individuals and families at or below 80% of the area median income, and the other 10 units would have to accept housing choice vouchers or rental assistance, which would be helping individuals and families at or below the 60% area median income. And the developer must demonstrate good faith efforts if the 50% of those 20 units, the 10, are not rented to Housing Choice Voucher holders. We do have an example in front of us right now of an 80-unit apartment complex that wants to do all affordable. That might be a situation where we don't want to necessarily have 40 of the units accept Housing Choice Vouchers just to have an affordable mixed income community. So we could look at those, depending on the size, on an individual basis. Other changes of note, community engagement and outreach. Whether building new or purchasing old, community development expects our development partners to reach out to organizations, groups, and stakeholders about the affordable units coming online. This is one thing we've heard that a lot of folks don't know about the affordable units. We're trying to do a better job on the marketing to assist and get the word out in the community that affordable units are coming online. And community development encourages our development partner to outreach and engage with all their neighbors in the immediate vicinity of a building or building purchase. So in the update, we talk that at a minimum, community development will require the developer, property manager, to outreach and meet with, in a timely lease-up manner, the following organizations that are not limited to. We just tried to come up with some of our main partners. So any partners out there that don't see their name on this list, we're just trying to come up with something as a starting point. So whether it's the Housing Authority, who has vouchers, Homeward Bound, who's doing a great job assisting our homeless population, Mountain Housing Opportunity, Habitat for Humanity, Thrive Asheville, the ABCLT, On Track, that's always working to try to get folks financial homes in order. Also the nearest neighborhood association, and all churches and businesses within a half mile. So we feel like if the marketing effort can happen on the front end, there's a better chance of letting more and more folks know that these affordable units are available. Some of you may notice that there's some homeownership opportunities on here. In these really struggling homeownership times, if we can assist with balancing the household housing budget better with their overall income, I think that it possibly sets folks up to possible down payment savings on their own and working with these agencies. So again, the key takeaways is hopefully this is an effort to preserve and protect affordable housing. Affordable units can be added much quicker than the normal 2 to 3 years of waiting for apartments to come online. We're asking our development partners to assist more with vouchers and trying to do a better job on the front end to let folks know throughout the community that there's affordable units coming online. And staff would recommend a motion to approve the Luigi policy with the proposed changes outlined, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions?
I talk fast.
No, I don't have any. I'm asking, anyone have any questions?
Only comments. So if there are questions, go ahead. Okay, I'll make a quick comment.
Do we want, first let's get a motion to approve this item.
I'll motion to approve the amended land use incentive grant policy with the proposed changes as outlined.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Go ahead.
Just a quick comment to thank you. I know when I, having been involved in affordable housing for so long in this community, I feel like it's an all hands on deck approach that is needed. And as you said, you know, we have great incentives and tools around new construction. We've been doing a great job of partnering with agencies, with nonprofits, with developers, with apartment builders, all of these things. But to me, this is one way that we have not tapped the preservation and protection of existing, whether it's a single family home or an apartment complex or a fourplex. And I'm already hearing from some of those landlords, so I have great hope for this. And yeah, thank you.
I guess I do have one question. And it's something I've never seen brought up in a housing meeting, so maybe I've missed it. But is there a way for us to consider a Ban the Box initiative so that folks who are reentering can also have access to housing?
I would probably defer to City Attorney Brad Branham.
I think in order to answer that question, we may have to explore a little bit more deeply what process you would be contemplating, Councilwoman Roney. Generally speaking, many of the rules around housing and I think whether it's with our Luigi program or any other program we might be participating in are generally governed with federal laws. Generally, the Fair Housing Act are going to play primarily the role in that. There are some protections also that are set out at the state level, but I'd be more than happy to look into those in more depth for you and provide some specific information.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and we don't have anyone signed up to speak under this item, so we'll take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. All right, that brings us to the end of our agenda. We do have a number of people signed up to speak under public comment. This is the public comment. We have about 21 people signed up to speak. This is an opportunity to speak on items that are not on our agenda for this evening. Speakers will have up to 3 minutes to speak. And the first person signed up to speak is Sheila Surratt.
Hi, again, my name is Sheila Surratt. I'm an Asheville native and downtown resident. Thank you for giving our firefighters $15 an hour. They deserve that. Imagine what, with sky-high crime, what they deal with daily. Defunding the police was the worst mistake ever. The crime is sky-high. And by the way, Chief of Police, those thousands of bicycles stolen, they're at Pritchard Park. The crime is sky-high. Pritchard Park is a big mess. The junkies have taken over Pritchard Park. These people have already told Homeward Bound they don't want help. Instead, they trash the city, run around and terrorize business owners, businesses, tourists, and residents. The park warden even got attacked a few weeks ago. What are you all going to do to clean up Pritchard Park? These people are very dangerous. If I had to tell you what all I have to witness every day, I'd be here for days. Mayor and City Council, why have you all refused to protect the citizens of Asheville? Pritchard Park needs to be shut down. This city looks like a dump, trash everywhere. Another murder, of course, happened last night in Asheville. Does that shock anyone? If you all can't protect the citizens of Asheville, each and every one of you need to resign. How about this? Defund the mayor and defund city council. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person signed up to speak is Janice Jones.
She left.
Okay, John Miller. Okay. Okay. Patricia Dockery. She has not left. And ma'am, if you want to pull that mic down so it's closer to you. There we go.
Thank you. With all due respect to Ben Woody, it's 2 years working on the noise ordinance. Some history here. May 2011, for those of you who can't subtract, that was 10 years ago. 52 West Asheville taxpayers signed a petition at that time, 10 years ago, asking that the Get Down Club, now the Auditorium, be made to obey the noise ordinance of the time. A neighbor who lived close to the bar got the full blast of its music/noise, and I went through a process the city had set up called a mediation. The judge ordered the fines the bar had collected to be spent on soundproofing improvements to keep the noise inside the building. I do not know if this was done or followed up on. Now, the owners have built an amplified music stage outside of the bar and are blasting away. Who issued that permit? 10 years later, stop procrastinating on passing the noise ordinance. There's no one solution that's going to please everyone. Please give us peace. Now, not in September, Do not make West Asheville suffer anymore.
Thank you. The next person signed up to speak is Ben Colvin.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. My name is Ben Colvin. I am an Asheville resident. I live in the Richmond Hill area. I'm a father. I'm a business owner. I'm a partner. I'm a friend. And I'm also the chair of Asheville Music Professionals. I'm standing here because I've gone through a lot of public policy making in the past. And I feel like if you get to the point where everybody's worn out, you're at a good spot. We've kind of exhausted a lot of the efforts to get to a good place. We've gotten there. We've found consensus. We've worked really hard with Ben and his staff. We've worked really hard with council. I really want to thank you guys for all the hard work. It's been 2 years of doing this, a lot of Zoom meetings. But we're here. We've passed public safety unanimously. We've come to some really good solutions, and we're there. I don't know exactly why we're kicking this down the road. I will say that if we go kick this down to September, we're going to have 3 more months of residents not getting relief from noise complaints. We're going to have 3 more months of businesses not sure what to do. By the time September comes around, we're going to have contracts signed, deposits put down well into 2022. And if something, goes a different way in September, we're going to have lost deposits, we're going to have lost contracts, we're going to have potentially tens of thousands of dollars lost on businesses that could go out of business and artists that lose contracts. So I'm in agreement. I think we're ready. We've done the work and we're ready to go. So I would ask that we move this off of September on to July 27th, get this on the agenda and get this voted through. Thanks.
Thank you. The next person signed up to speak is Josh Blake. Okay. Okay. Stephen West. Sharon Davis. Liz Talent.
Hi, council and staff. My name is Liz Talent, and I am an Asheville resident. I live in North Asheville. I'm a board member of the Asheville Area Arts Council, and I'm one of the operators of the Orange Peel and Orange Peel Events and Rabbit Rabbit. I had a lot of prepared comments to make, but I feel like since we did not see a full presentation of the ordinance tonight, I won't go into a ton of detail about our position, but I will echo the 2 speakers before me in saying that the community has put a ton of work into this. Staff has put years of time into this. The last several meetings that we have had have been, frankly, more contentious than the ones we had 4 or 5 months ago. So I think in terms of consensus and community building and kind of good faith effort, we are moving in the wrong direction by delaying a vote on the noise ordinance. I will echo what Ben said in making the point that music venues are still digging out of the pandemic. I noticed in, looking at federal grants, only 3 Asheville promoters or venues or theater groups have received any kind of federal grant funding, so all of us are still kind of operating in the negative, and we desperately need to know what our legal footing and situation is going to be in order to make business decisions. And so we were really disappointed that the vote was moved off of today's agenda, and I just want to echo that we too are really ready to move forward on this issue. I would love to see it added to the July agenda. If we feel like that agenda is too full, I know it's an unusual request, but I feel like this is an issue that has a lot of community interest and a lot of community engagement. Maybe we could make a special session to vote on it. But I feel like I speak for the other venues in town and the rest of the folks on both positions, residents and music professionals, in asking that we do not delay this vote until September. Thank you.
Nina Tovish.
Good evening, Council. Nina Tovish from Shiloh. I'd like to thank the Council, City Manager Campbell and staff, as well as all who participated for the informative panel presentations and discussions on reparations. I heard three important repeating themes from both panelists and audience speakers. I heard people talk about the importance of land and home ownership for the creation of generational wealth. I heard about the central importance of access to work opportunities that pay enough for families to thrive, not just survive. And I heard about the critical importance of educational opportunity and equity. Council has just passed its budget. It contains a very modest amount for property tax mitigation. In my view, not enough. I hope you'll find a way to expand that amount substantially. But most importantly, I want to once again urge you to use publicly available material in the property tax database to automatically distribute rebates to a subset of vulnerable homeowners using a combination of the three criteria I mentioned last time: tenure, that's length of homeownership; percentage of valuation increase, that's to offset sharply increased valuations over that time frame; and actual property value as a percentage of area media home assessment. This is the key point. People should not have to apply for this mitigation. It should be automatic. They shouldn't have to provide tax forms or fill anything out. You can make those variables work at some value for whatever funds that you have available. You'll save staff time, you'll reach more of the people who need this assistance without having to spend money on communicating and administering the process. Speaker after speaker in the reparations series mentioned that you cannot make reparations while continuing to do harm. Providing automatic tax rebates reduces the harm of increased tax rates. One other note. I urge you to follow the recommendations of the Housing and Community Development Committee to put the city-owned property at 319 Biltmore Ave into the reparations program. Land and home ownership need to be at the heart of making restitution to a community that was dispossessed by urban renewal. Thank you for your attention.
The next person signed up to speak is Michael Green.
Thank you very much. My name is Michael Green, fellow Ashevilleans. I'm native Ashevillean. In 1986, my family and I developed Wicken Green Plaza, and in 1986, there was not much around. We were considered to be pioneers, and I often say pioneers usually got shot. So we were lucky that we didn't get shot. I was also, in 1979, one of three people, including one folks in the planning department, that developed Belshire. So go back a long time in trying to make things positive for our city. And I'm delighted with the service that each of you perform for our community. Thank you, because it is not an easy thing to do. You are all very deliberate on what you're doing. I was involved in a meeting last night. Thank you for those of you who came, and wanted to tell you that I'm delighted to note tonight, Mayor Esther, great job on what you had to say in acknowledging the wonderful thing that our police officers do. Great to see that the firemen got, or all of our fire people got a nice raise as well. Probably still not enough, but at the same time, wonderful to see that we're doing that for our Asheville police. But you know what? As a business owner and studying what motivates folks, money's one of those things, but it's also the acknowledgement that you're doing a good job. So I would like to encourage each of you personally and corporately to not only tell them all of our officers all the time that they're doing a good job, but to make public knowledge of that, because I think so often across our country, and you mentioned this last night, that we're seeing the pendulum swing in a different way. And that's why we don't have folks that want to do this. So if we can encourage folks to want to serve our community like you all are serving, like each of us do, what a much more wonderful community we have. You know, I love Asheville. I hope we're on the right direction. Last night we talked about the porta-johns. This morning I went up to check the one on Wall Street. There was a guy camping in there. Those things need to move away and be done. In addition to that, you know, I like to see things be changing overall. It was a mention about Pritchard Park tonight. I am not afraid of anything. I walk through Pritchard Park all the time. I walked through twice today. Pritchard Park was not a bad place today. There were actually families sitting on the park benches. They might be tourists or whatever, but they were enjoying our parks. I saw one of the Rivertop people cleaning out the refuse out of the bushes and whatnot. I thanked him for doing that, and he said, no problem. So I would encourage everyone, not only council folks, but folks in this room and folks on television that are seeing this, to do that very same thing. Don't be afraid to walk our streets. Tell people they're doing a good job. Thank you all. I guess that was my time.
Yes. Yes, Maggie has the timer. Her text message beep went off most of the night, but that was not intentional. Normally she keeps time for the speakers, so I just had to razz you. It's my favorite. Okay, our next person signed up to speak is Dana Robertson.
Hi, thank you. So like you said, my name is Dana Robertson. I live in West Asheville. I am also a mother, and I am a part of the team that operates the Orange Peel and Orange Peel events. In 2020, during the pandemic, we opened Rabbit Rabbit alongside Asheville Pizza Company, and we were able to offer work to folks in our industry who were desperate to make ends meet. I was one of those people. We created a fun, lively outdoor space downtown that was safe for local people to resume some sense of normalcy in incredibly turbulent times. We worked hard to open a venue that would be an asset to Asheville and be a unique venue that's safe and welcoming for everyone to enjoy. Prior to opening, we attended numerous neighborhood meetings to tell people about our plans to host outdoor concerts at Rabbit Rabbit seasonally and also our year-round community events. And we were also there to solicit feedback about how we could best use the space in a way that we could also be good neighbors. It was clear from the beginning that while many folks were excited to see two local businesses investing in downtown rather than another development of a hotel or luxury condos, a select few were concerned about the sound from our outdoor concert series. We've been very sensitive to these concerns from the start, spending thousands on a sound study to ensure that we would not be exceeding dangerous decibel limits for our closest neighbors. Unfortunately, the neighborliness has not always been a two-way street, with a very small minority of downtown condo owners that have been incredibly difficult to cater to. Although we've only had one local concert as of yet, we've been very discriminating in the types of shows that we've booked for our upcoming season, intentionally booking artists that are user-friendly. For one example, in December, we tried out a local DJ for a few hours on a Sunday afternoon, and we received complaints from two of the neighboring condo owners. So out of abundance of deference to them, we invested in equipment to adapt this event into a completely silent disco where attendees have music through wireless headphones. We moved all of our 7:30 p.m. movies, all movies after 7:30 p.m. to a silent format as well. And we still host kids' movies with sound, but we've added double the speakers, so we have more of like a directional sound rather than all the sound coming from one space. So it actually results in lower overall volume. In fact, I've heard right now that we have a bunch of families on site that are watching a free movie night. Oh, okay. That was quick. So basically, we're really trying to push for us to move forward this sound ordinance. We want to get back to work. We want to see us move forward in a positive way. Thank you.
The next person signed up to speak is Karen Ramshaw.
Hi, my name's Karen Ramshaw. I work with public interest projects, and I just have a few perspectives about the noise ordinance. The city noise surveys list the most disruptive issues to be the following, in order: car noise, construction, leaf blower, lawnmower, outdoor equipment, dog barking, industrial equipment, trash pickup, and finally, concerts, festivals, and amplified music. Earlier today, Ben was talking about the fact that during the pandemic, when most businesses were closed, there were only 8 fewer noise complaints, which just reinforces the fact that most noise complaints are neighbor to neighbor, yet a lot of the harshest restrictions are against the live music industry. There's also an impression that the noise ordinance is pitting musicians and businesses against residents, and that's not true. In the first place, musicians and staffs and owners of businesses are also residents, and many residents outside the industry support our lively and important music and entertainment scene. Darn claims to be the voice of downtown Asheville's residents, but how many renters under the age of 30 are members of Darn? This isn't to say that Darn doesn't represent residents, but they don't speak for all residents. In a downtown commission meeting earlier this month, a downtown condo owner stated that downtown needed to become less of an entertainment area and more of a residential neighborhood. So exactly where does the entertainment go? I mean, we can't put everything in South Asheville. I manage a few downtown residential properties, primarily workforce housing. My tenants pay a premium to live downtown because they like being in a vibrant and, yes, noisy downtown. When I ask them about noise from venues, bars, festivals, etc., tenants typically respond with this puzzled, "We live downtown." Now, my husband and I moved downtown in 2007, and I love the convenience and the ability to take part so easily in the cultural and entertainment opportunities. I used to pull a stool over to the window just to watch what was going on down Biltmore Avenue. There were trade-offs, certainly. Relentless panhandling, the busker with the 4-song repertoire under my window for 45 minutes, and the karaoke bar that liked to put its speakers on the sidewalk. And I don't live downtown any longer. Downtown may have changed, but I have definitely changed. I am older, I am crabbier, and I don't sleep well, even under the most ideal of circumstances. And a few times I've heard people bring up Julian Price in their arguments for stricter decibel levels downtown. Julian invested in downtown through public interest projects, and our company did a lot to bring residential back to the CBD. Julian also invested in the Orange Peel, even though Julian said he would not go to a show, because Julian didn't think downtown should cater to him. Like me, Julian would likely have moved out of downtown at some point to someplace calmer where he could be anonymous and play golf. I still love downtown. I just don't want to live here. So, it's not you downtown, it's me. Thank you.
Okay, Pat Whalen. Okay. Joe Minicozy.
I came to talk about the budget, but I'm sort of equipment challenged here. We're not allowed to plug in and show anything, and you don't have the overhead?
No, but we do have a system if you can get it to the clerk ahead of time. That's how we normally operate.
Well, this is a council, I'm just putting it out there, it's a council rule, you all can change it, so I can just show information.
Well, IT might have words with us, but it's not
I
us.
present with cities all over the country. I mean, we usually just plug into a computer and go. But this is called information equity. If Kim, could we just get the slides that Kim's got? Just the slides that she presented. We can start there. My company's practice focuses on presenting information to people, and we call it communicating visually. So let's just take this one. Yeah, we'll start there. So this is what we did to show what's happening with traditionally redline communities and the growth of value in those neighborhoods. So you can see in Burton Street, it's growing at 38% versus Brucemont Circle, my former neighborhood, at 17%. What that represents is a growth in value at an exceptional rate. It really stands out clearly when you look at Shiloh versus Biltmore Forest. And what we see across this model is, and we'll just kind of zoom in over here at Burton Street versus Brucemont Circle. The bottom layer is the dirt value change, and the top layer is the building on top of it. So the way that the model works, the way that the tax system works, is there's a gross inflation, particularly for lower wealth housing, which is disproportionately African American or black. So you're looking at a a 17% gain for white neighborhoods where you get a discount in the taxation versus black households at 2%. So 2%, 17%. 17% gift of tax benefit to white households versus 2% for black households. And by adding insult to injury, you're passing a budget and raising taxes on those that are already having the gas turned up with an assessment. And we're essentially flying blind and not even looking at this data. You know, we didn't have a communication about this. We didn't talk, I saw that Kim tried, but it's just, I don't have the ability to communicate this even here right now, if be it not for the fact that these happen to be arbitrarily in this presentation. And it's, to give you another data point, Brucemont Circle, what they're gonna feel is an effective tax rate of 2.5%. And over in Southside and South French Broad, it's gonna be a 5% tax impact on their income. So that's double the tax impact, and we're gonna go ahead and raise their assessment. So I think just we need to be fair about this. We need to start building trust. I mean, part of trust could be just being able to show some stuff on a computer. And I just ask that we have a more open conversation about this and allow more communication and back and forth in our community, and to trust some of our citizens to bring information forward. I'm not gonna, you know, why do we have this rule that I can't plug my computer in? Is it, did somebody show porn or something like that? I mean, it's just, this is kind of insulting. And then I think that we need to be more equitable about what we're considering financially for people in our community. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you. The next person signed up to speak is Caleb Bysert. Did we just leave that?
Good evening, council members, mayor, city management. Thank you for hearing me tonight. I'm a musician, poet, music venue manager. I've lived in Asheville since 2009. I used to play a lot of gigs down in Charlotte until they passed a noise ordinance in 2011 that restricted live music after 10 p.m. and imposed fines for violations. Overnight, my work dried up and has not returned. I just wanted to express tonight some concerns I have about the noise ordinance. I know it's taken a lot of time, but I think it's an important issue to get right. I find, I'm concerned that this may be discriminatory in the types of music that are allowed. Certain music is loud by nature, hip-hop, electronic music, West African drumming. I think this could open a door for individuals and businesses to be harassed, and we might look at some element that deals with chronic complaints as well, the other end of it. I'm concerned about the fines and how that could hurt small businesses, and I have concerns about decibel levels and how they are a bit subjective by nature, though they can sound very scientific, and that perhaps some of these levels are too low. In short, I just want to ask that we make sure the noise ordinance protects and supports our live music and our entertainment industry and does not target nor stifle it. Live music contributes to a good quality of life. Music is therapeutic, and as we all know, music is a huge part of Asheville and its history. Please, please hear my concerns and vote on the noise ordinance and make sure it protects live music. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Keely Flo.
Hi, just I'm Keely Flo. I've been in Asheville since 2010, and I just have some kind of general comments as well on the noise ordinance. You probably have heard a lot of them before. It's popular folk wisdom to say that your right to swing your arm ends where my face begins. However, what do we do if I freely choose to step into that space in which you are already swinging your arms? The white paper produced by the Kenilworth Noise Committee claims that citizens are entitled to the right to live in an environment free from excessive noise. I like to think that I have a right to my personal space, which I would judge to be about 2 feet around my person. But when I lived in New York, if I chose to take the subway, especially during rush hour, then I would expect to have to renegotiate the amount of space as well as my claim to my right to it. In the same light, people may have a right to live free of excessive noise unless that is, of course, they freely choose to live in an urban neighborhood where people have always been expected to and respected the call to compromise their claim to that right in order to partake of the benefits of living in an exciting and interesting city. People are attracted to places that are defined and animated by their shared nature, places that come alive with a proximity to thriving commercial and cultural entities and efforts, and it shows in the price of real estate here. Those who would choose to live in an urban neighborhood and that set about legislating new standards for it are trying to have their cake and eat it too. And this usually comes at the cost to the very culture that attracted them here in the first place. This is the ironic nature of gentrification, and noise ordinances are famously wielded as potent tools for the forces of gentrification. Please be very careful with the noise ordinance. I implore you. If it's not carefully and considerately established, it can easily be, in effect, a mandate of investment toward maintaining and protecting the value of already high-priced property. And it won't come at the financial cost to those who will profit most from it, the owners of local real estate. It will cost the city government and its coffers to create and enforce it. It will come at a remarkable and inestimable social cost to the culture of Asheville. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person signed up to speak is Daniel Young.
I would like to say good afternoon, good evening to the city council members. I want to thank Shanika Smith, Vice Mayor, Ken Roniford, and Deborah Campbell for coming out to the June 19th event. What we did this weekend was bring our community together. We showed y'all that we can work together as one, black and white. The kids was happy and everybody was happy. I got a few things that I do want to address. I'm going to address about the police situation. The black people that was pulled over by the Asheville Police Department, the fines they accumulated was $40,000. And I'm still with defunding the police. And what he did not show, how many deaths are caused by the police department. That should have been on that list also. I'm speaking about the $13 million property for 319 Biltmore Avenue. That needs to be given to the black people for reparation. We need our own space. That's not going to be governed by the city council members telling us we got a time where we can't do this and that. We need to stop that. We need something we can cultivate for our own kids. We need something for us. We tired of going to spending our money to the orange peel or whatever. We need to put our money back into our own communities. And I want to speak about the 20 minutes on noise management, about this music. We had music at June 19th. Music is a part of healing. The music that we listened to this weekend healed our community. Look what we went through. We had, 5 deaths from the last few weeks, but this weekend wasn't no problem with the law. Ask the Asheville police to tell you that. No crime, no nothing. Something happened this morning that we didn't have no control over. But if y'all give our community something to do with our kids so we can interact with them, they will not be out here doing this and that. But y'all shooting down the Goon Bay event for next coming up in September. But the city invested $52,000 for fireworks. but we can't even put money into our community so we can stop this violence. And I mean, that's all I got to say. I would like for our community to do better. The city council members, the ones that was at the June 19th, they came down and mingled with the community. Bumped heads, shook hands, and hugged each other. We need all of y'all to be there. Not just half of y'all. Y'all get paid, don't you? Come on out to it. It was a paid event for y'all. Come and mingle with the community. I mean, damn, everything ain't about money. Sometimes you got to give back physically and come out and touch somebody. Show the community that you care about us. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person signed up is Rachel.
Hi. Just a couple points that I wanted to share. $2.1 million divided by the estimated 10,000 Black people in Asheville would come to about $200 per person. How can you call $200 reparations? I know that you guys are trying to get more funds for that. Meanwhile, the Asheville Police Department has $30 million budget. So it kind of seems clear to me that you could take some of that from all the people that are quitting the police department and put it into the Black community. We obviously have the funds, they just need to be reallocated. It feels the community has not been heard or even considered by you guys. There's just a major lack of addressing things. Like, I've been sitting here this whole time and haven't heard you guys actually address the concerns that we brought up last year during the protests with the police violence in Asheville. I just don't hear you guys actually saying, like, we hear you that police are killing you and hurting your communities. It's really frustrating. You guys kind of like beat around the bush with this issue, and you just keep commending police officers for doing a good job, but they're not. They're hurting our community. We don't need more police. We don't need more money for police. More police does not equal less crime. That has been shown in so many statistics throughout the United States. More police does not equal less crime. More police equals more violence. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person signed up to speak is Benjamin Colvin or Calvin. I can't tell if it's an A or no. Oh, double sign. Okay. Sorry. Dewana Little.
Good evening, and thank you to the City Council and city staff for all the work that we have done over the years and all the work that we are doing. I am here and kind of discouraged to be here yet again and not see the YMI as a line item in this budget and supporting the restoration and the revitalization of this 128. I have to say that because as I have presented my presentations and asked for meetings, and we have been raising money, we're gonna raise $3 million towards the revitalization of the YMI and the capacity building, we still haven't gotten the support from our city. And the YMI is in the city's backyard, literally behind y'all like past the fire department, you at the YMI. And so for me, to be standing here on my vacation and seeing this is disheartening to have to come before y'all yet again and ask for support for the YMI and the restoration of our building. We're in the middle of a $6 million capital campaign. Thanks to the TDA and self-help, we've been able to raise $3 million in other funding streams, $3 million so far, and we really need the support of the city. We really need the city to show that this matters. We're not talking about any institution. This is not setting a precedent that y'all have not done this before, because you have. And so, like, we're not an anomaly. All we're asking is for support to come in and show that the city is behind preserving this historical agency. It's 128 years of history, African-American history. You can't say I'm sorry I'm emotional because you can't say reparations and not say the why am I. I look at our city council members, you cannot, especially our African American city council members. The YMI has been a place, a community space in this city for 128 years. It has been where Black people felt safe to convene. It has had its place. Yeah, it's had its ups and downs like any organization, if you really look. But we are here, and we are growing, and we're building, and we're coming back. And all I'm here to say is that we need y'all support. I have did any and everything that has been asked of me. What I'm asking from y'all is, please let us know what we need to do. What is it? What am I missing? What do we need to do to get the support of city behind the YMI and the restoration of this project? Not through grant funding, we already doing it. We're already doing programmatic things with the city staff. That's like, we doing that. We're in the community, we're doing services, we're doing all of the things. What do we need to get that direct support from the city to restore this building?
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was our last speaker signed up to speak, and if we're going to conclude, unless there's we're asking for sign-ups. But did you want to speak? I may regret that.
Hey, my name is Jonathan Wainscott, and I did make it to the reparations series the next day after last week when I did make the comments about the TDA. I guess maybe that was a little hasty and rude for me to not be so appreciative of the Buncombe County Tourism Development Authority for sponsoring this. Certainly it's the least that they could do, and I think they do deserve credit for doing the least in town. I have to say that I'm thrilled that Dr. Darren Waters was the moderator there. He was the one who revealed recently that Newton Shepherd was our first Black representative here in Asheville in 1882, and he inspired me to look more into the history of Asheville. I even went down to the City of Asheville vaults. Maggie was really helpful. I got to put my hands on the oldest minutes in town, 1854. I was looking for. I thought I'd have to flip through all these books and see when the language changed when we went from a board of aldermen to a board of commissioners and all that. It's right there on the edge of the book, you know. Didn't even have to flip through it at all. So it's history right in our backyard. But I do want to continue to, express my concern about the Buncombe County Tourism Development Authority and how much money they get and how much money they spend. Since last time I was here, when I said that they spend on average $71,000 a day, that means they've spent $1 million since last time I was here. You're talking about a $2 million reparations fund, and 2 weeks ago, $26 million a year for the Tourism Development Authority. That's $1 million every 2 weeks. And all we're doing is advertising Asheville to be a wonderful place. And when the entire agency is 26 people and they're all white and 80% women, basically the Tourism Development Authority looks like Sage, Esther, Gwen, Kim, and Brad times 5. That's problematic for me, maybe not anybody else. I hear about the disparity between, representation in the police department, and not as many blacks serving in the police department as live here in town. I hear that metric all the time. Same goes with teachers, but I don't hear anybody criticizing Asheville Chamber of Commerce that has, I believe, one black person on staff in a professional capacity, and the building supervisor, a janitor. WCQS doesn't have any black people. Support black businesses, boycott white-only media. Mountain Express doesn't have any black reporters. We got no black journalists in this town, so black voices can't be heard. I got a problem with that. It's not your fault. I appreciate that a lot of work went into the reparations. If I were going to give it a grade, I'm a harsh critic, as you know. I would give it an I, incomplete. I think that there were lots of good things to be heard. And thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Enwena Smith, and I work for a local domestic violence agency here in Asheville, and I am the housing case manager. And I was interested in that PowerPoint about the Luigi grants. 100 units is not enough. Every day, my phone rings with women crying because they are homeless with their children. Every day, someone is begging me to put them in shelter. Every day, I am emotional when I go to work and leave work. And as you see, my 2 children, I have to decompress every day when I come home because I bring home so much trauma from women crying all day, begging me, can you please find a home for me and my babies? We're tired of living in a shelter. We've been in a shelter 6 months. We've been in the shelter 9 months. We've been to this way. 100 units, we could fill that in one day. I could fill that in 5 hours from the amount of women who are on my caseload. And the Lee Walker Heights situation, we know some shady stuff is going on over there. They are not putting our people, especially people of color, in those units. We have a concern with affordable housing. Yes, the city is about to give out numerous amounts of Section 8 vouchers, but we don't have any property owners who are willing to take these Section 8 vouchers. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna have all these Section 8 vouchers, no property managers, no property to put these people in? We gotta do something. Luigi, that sounds good, but it's not enough. We have to increase affordable housing here in Asheville. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sorry.
Hey guys, my name is Dwayne McAfee, and I think I'd just like to make an observation more than anything else. During the intermission, I introduced myself to the mayor, I introduced myself to the city manager, and in a conversation with the city manager, one of the police officers overheard the comment. Me and that officer then engaged for the next 10, 15 minutes in conversation. I now have his card in my hand, and I know that this conversation is going to bring fruit. And it's going to bring fruit because when 2 like-minded people decide to make a change, anything can happen. I'm tired of all of the negativity that goes on. At some point, people, we're all going to have to band together. We're either going to survive this together, or this is going to be our demise. Reparations isn't a black man's issue. It's this country's issue, based on this country's history of what it done to a certain population of its society. You have to remedy that. It's plain and simple. We have to speak the truth in our schools to our young people. I'm not a black man that agrees with defunding the police. I'm a black man that agrees with getting the bad police officers off the job. There's a big difference. So I am introducing myself. My name is Dwayne McAfee. I am back home, and you're going to be seeing a whole lot of me from now on.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes. We're going to practice. Maybe we need to keep Sarah out there to take signups.
I'll be real quick.
Okay.
Just Vicki Meath, West Asheville. 2 things real quick. First of all, the eviction moratorium is about to expire. And you have ARPA funds, and a use of ARPA funds can immediately go into eviction protection. So I'd encourage you to not continue to wait to, even by July 27th, the eviction moratorium is going to be over. So just consider use of ARPA funds for eviction protection. Second of all, just based on the comments from this woman over here about Luigi, it just got me thinking also too, just for us, we need to start taking a look at what those numbers actually mean. At 80% area median income, someone making our living wage rate is not even like making enough to qualify for a one-bedroom apartment, because area median income and fair market rent are two different numbers. And so I think we need to really start talking about affordability at 60% of area median income or below. You'll be hearing much more from me, as you know. You know that I'm not quiet about issues, about this issue over, the next year or so, or however it takes to change this. But we need to start looking at 60% of area median income as affordability. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? All right. Did anyone have a comment on council before we adjourn? We are, as Vicki mentioned, we're not going to be back here until the end of July, when we get to take up the Charlotte Street project. So I'm sure there'll be a very short meeting.
Mayor, I'd like to make a quick comment. I previously had been very supportive of continuing the noise ordinance into next year. When we first had this discussion, it was around the pandemic and the impacts to the industry, and I supported and kind of lobbied for it to be continued. Something that was said tonight struck me that I hadn't heard, and this is the impact to the industries and their planning and their contracts, and the detrimental effect of not knowing the state of their industry. So I would just like to voice that I would support bringing it back in July to address this sooner if possible.
And I too, I'm with Sage. I was going to say something about that outside of council, that I think that we can't just keep pushing it down the road. And like I said, basically it's like anything else. If we need to tweak it, after it being in effect, then let's do that. But we need to actually get something on the books. And also, I'd like to say thank you. This has been a wonderful evening to hear so many people's concerns about things that really impact the community, as far as the housing. The young lady that's sitting there, and it just really hit me, because being in real estate and watching what she's talking about, and that's what I've been trying to get over for years, and people just don't understand. And it's amazing. Like I said, most of the people come to my office here in Asheville, they say to me they're looking for a place to buy or rent, and I ask, what is your income? And usually the answer is $1,000, and I say, well, okay, is that every week, every 2 weeks? And they usually say every month. That means they qualify for a $300 a month rental unit. And what I'm telling you, you're looking at, especially when you've got over, close to 50% of the blacks living in the housing development right now. So this is a big issue, and it is hurtful, it's painful. I can almost feel her pain, because I deal with it also. So just like to thank you all for sharing all these things, because these are things that we need to know in the community, what's going on, because a lot of us are so far away from it that we can't comprehend it, and but it is real, and it's something that we gotta do something about. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. I'm sorry, I just wasn't finished, but I did want to actually speak to I know that Helpmate is seeking to build a new, larger shelter, and I was very touched by the things that you said and many of the comments tonight, and I just wanted to thank everyone for their time.
Ben, you're sitting in the back. Are you cool with us bringing the noise ordinance back at the end of July? Maggie. Hey, I mean, we'll have to have like extra water or something.
I can just tell council I have 4 public hearings on that date. One of the ones is the Charlotte Street.
And then what are the other 2?
One is a
3. No, well, I know. Oh.
One is a closing, and I apologize, I don't remember what the other 2 are off the bat.
The one that was continued for this.
No, that's on September.
But it is your agenda, Mayor. I'll be happy to put it on any meeting that you'd like. Just know that.
It'll be a long night.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Okay.
And don't forget. And don't forget that you have a work session as well on ARPA that day. Just a reminder.
Okay.
And that starts at 2:30. I mean, we could do.
Okay, I'm going to reveal my secret for getting through this. I actually take a little Advil.
You could.
And so.
Our next. The
just gonna
next
tell you.
available date would be August 24.
I'm gonna have to do that night.
Mayor, the next available date would be August 24. Now, mind you, I have 4 public hearings already on that day, but they are nothing as heavy as the Charlotte Street issue.
Okay, well, let's try to plan on that, just barreling ahead, and,
July 27 then?
yeah, and maybe noise ordinance people, you guys can get like, organized and do like designated
Speakers.
people who speak, and then other people can just say, you know, that's for me too, you know, anyway, just kind of a streamline, just a suggestion. Okay, all right. Yeah. Yes, yeah, maybe everyone already talked, okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, so with that, we are. Okay, we'll adjourn the meeting, but we'll be glad to come talk with you. But we're adjourned for this evening.